Chapter 3043. Ling Han made his move, his figure transforming into a gust of wind that charged toward Chong Yen. Just as the large black dog and the others had said, he couldn't always target Piyu. He had to be fair, and he had to be fair. When Ling Han arrived, Chong Yen smirked coldly and also struck out with his hand. He was naturally unafraid. Old thief, prepare to be surprised. Ling Han suddenly activated all of his sixth-rate symbols. Hong, his power suddenly increased by 3,000 times, and the power of the plane surged, causing his power to instantly reach the level that could crush the peak stage of the seventh step. Peng, he struck out with his fist, and Chong Yan's hand instantly became crooked. It couldn't block this punch at all, and it landed on his face with unstoppable force. Chong Yan was immediately sent flying like a kite with a broken string. The three great paragons, Big Dipper, Ban Yu, and Black Feather were all shocked. They didn't think that Ling Han's battle prowess had actually reached such a height. This was too terrifying. Chong Yan was actually at a disadvantage in terms of power, and it wasn't just by a little bit. Only Celestial Venerable Piyu had already expected this, and actually felt a sense of schadenfreude in his heart. Finally, he wasn't the only one who was unlucky. However, after being stunned for a moment, the Celestial Venerable Big Dipper and the others hurriedly rushed forward. They couldn't just watch as Ling Han bullied Chong Yen, right? But so what if the four of them attacked together? Ling Han's current power was completely overwhelming. Even if the five great paragons joined forces, they wouldn't be a match for him. Peng, peng, peng. Chong Yen instantly became a sandbag. Ling Han's rising dragon fist sent Chong Yen flying into the air. Then, with a kick, Chong Yen was sent flying downwards. Chong Yen roared loudly. He was a seventh-step paragon, and now he was being beaten up in front of others. How could he endure this? Don't feel bad. You're not the first, Ling Han said with a smile. Peng, he sent out another kick, and it landed between Chong Yan's legs. The force of this kick was so great that it instantly caused Chong Yen to disappear. Thankfully, the physique of a seventh-step paragon wasn't bad. Otherwise, his balls would definitely be completely shattered by now. Even so, Big Dipper and the other Empyreans couldn't help but clamp their legs together, feeling a pain in the ass. Empyrean Sundermount could empathize with them. This wasn't the first time he had been kicked in the balls. Next, Ling Han's gaze swept across the faces of Big Dipper, Black Feather, and Half Moon. Why can't you see through Yu? The Big Dipper trio immediately recalled what Ling Han had said, and their hearts trembled involuntarily. Could Poyu be the first victim? They couldn't help but look at Poyu sympathetically. Previously, they had personally witnessed Chong Yen being trampled upon. His appearance was truly tragic. Poyu couldn't help but blush. Why are you looking at me? Ling Han laughed heartily and charged at 7-star. You. Now he was too strong. Even a peak 7-step expert could not stop him. Of course, Big Dipper was unwilling to be humiliated. He activated all the first-class symbols and 8 planes. As expected, Big Dipper also controlled more planes. Ling Han was certain that they had used some sort of method to divide up the plane within Feng Wuding's body. But what of it? Bang! With just one strike, Big Dipper was sent flying. Even Black Feather and the other 2 Supremes' help was useless. At this time, Chong Yen had already charged back. Damn Junior! His hair flew into the sky. He was furious to the extreme. Ling Han sneered and said, "You're already so old. It's indeed time for you to die. As for me, you don't have to worry about me. You won't live to see that day." Bang bang bang. Even under the combined attacks of 5 Supremes, he still fiercely pressed forward and continued to beat up Big Dipper. After Heavenly Venerable Big Dipper, it was Heavenly Venerable Black Feather, and then Heavenly Venerable Half Moon. Ling Han was very fair. He beat up every Heavenly Venerable. He was truly fair and did not favor one over the other. He only had 2 hours of explosive power. Otherwise, even beating up each Heavenly Venerable for 3 days and 3 nights would not be enough to vent his anger. Of course, he did not beat up Poyu again. He had already beaten him up 8 times. It was enough. Old thieves, the next time we meet, it won't be so simple. Ling Han was very satisfied. This breath of resentment had been completely vented. It was as if he had obtained some kind of release and relief. His spirit had risen to a different level. He believed that after this seclusion, he would definitely be able to break through to the sixth step. He tore open the void and left without hesitation. "Little thief, don't think of leaving." The five supremes hurriedly chased after him. However, Ling Han still had a trace of power left. With a punch, he easily forced them back and left calmly. They could only watch helplessly as Ling Han tore through the void and left. The five supreme beings could only watch on helplessly. Without the planar coordinates, it was impossible for them to leave the void. They could only return the way they came. The five supremes stood still and looked at each other in dismay. They did not speak. After a long time, Heavenly Venerable Half Moon said, "This kid is a great calamity." Strange. According to the information we obtained, Feng Wooding is the son of destiny. Only he can kill frenzy. But looking at how monstrous this kid is, he seems to have a higher chance of killing frenzy than Feng Wooding. I originally thought that after Feng Wooding died, our plan would not be able to be realized. However, we unexpectedly obtained some secrets from Feng Wooding and obtained even more planar energy. This concerns whether or not we can obtain the core of the world when the Yuan world is destroyed. But this kid continues to grow. It is extremely likely that we will really be suppressed by that kid. The five supremes all fell silent. So what? Could they come up with any countermeasures? We can only quickly strengthen the plane we obtained. At that time, we can immediately cause the Yuan world to be destroyed, snatch the core, and start a new legend for us. The five supremes all nodded. However, after a while, they only heard Heavenly Venerable Blackfeather say, "But is the information we obtained regarding the core of the world really correct?" With the appearance of extinction, this Venerable keeps having a feeling that he has fallen into some kind of scheme. We are undying and indestructible. Who can scheme against us?" Chong Yen said arrogantly. The other four also shook their heads slowly. With how strong they were, how could anyone scheme against them? Ling Han tore open the void, but did not appear in the Xuanma plane. Thus, he could only travel through the void a few more times, and used more than a month's time to reunite with the Empress and the others. "I need to cultivate in seclusion, and it will be a very long time," Ling Han said. "All right." The Empress and the others all nodded. Only Hu Niu hugged him coyly. "Ling Han, Niu wants to play with you," she said coquettishly. Ling Han patted her shoulder. "I'll owe you this time. When I come out of seclusion, I will definitely accompany you, okay?" "Ling Han, you are very bad." She became angry and pouted her small mouth. Ling Han comforted this little wife of his who had yet to grow up, and then began to cultivate in seclusion. Just as he had said before, he definitely had to advance 6 steps this time. He sat down cross-legged and began a long period of seclusion. His mind was clear, and it was as if he could connect heaven and earth. The tens of thousands of planes in his body were all boiling. End of this chapter. Chapter 3045. Though he'd already been a father twice, when he found out that he was going to be a father for the 3rd time, Ling Han was still overjoyed. Before the child was born, Ling Han had already traveled all over the origin world to pave the best path for his child. It was difficult to conceive, but it wasn't easy to give birth either. It might take hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years. After Ling Han prepared the natural treasures, he went to the foreign battlefield first. Even if Zhu Xian heir was far inferior to the Empress, because Ling Han was too strong, this child couldn't be born in a short time. Ling Han directly ran to the mountain-shattering dojo. There was good news, so he naturally had to share it with his old rival. Unexpectedly, the mountain-shattering dojo actually reopened and accepted countless disciples. Why did this old bastard have such thick skin? Ling Han landed and directly smashed the dojo's signboard with a palm strike. Then he called out, "Mountain-shattering dojo old thief, your grandfather is here again." Pooh. Those who were cultivating in the dojo all choked. All of them widened their eyes, clearly unable to accept this. What was going on? There was actually someone who dared to call Heavenly Venerable you an old thief, and call himself grandfather? Just how gutsy did he have to be able to make anyone who heard him tremble all over? "Who are you, daring to cause trouble in our dojo?" Someone jumped out. Of course, he had to perform well at this time. Who knew, maybe Heavenly Venerable Yupa would look favorably upon him and take him in as a personal disciple. Ling Han ignored him. He naturally wouldn't take such a minor character to heart. He only had to wait for a moment, and he was sure that mountain-shattering dojo would soon appear. "I'm asking you a question," the Celestial King shouted. Hong, his voice turned into a large sword, slashing at Ling Han. "Don't be impatient," Ling Han said softly, but that large sword suddenly shattered, and that Celestial King sat on the ground, cold sweat rolling down his forehead, unable to move at all. Instantly, no one dared to move anymore. Even an idiot would know that Ling Han's strength was unfathomable. It was not something that a Celestial King could fight against, because that Celestial King was a level 9 Celestial. In just a short while, the entire sky was filled with a dazzling red glow, and a frightening aura that could make one's soul tremble attacked. Brat! Empyrean Sundermount appeared. He was clearly much more powerful than before, and he gave off a suffocating feeling that not even the heavens and earth could contain him. Ling Han narrowed his eyes. It seemed that he wasn't the only one who had improved. Poyu had also improved. This was very natural. After so many years, Poyu had probably pushed all the planes in his body to a higher level. Therefore, his strength had naturally risen to a higher level. "You've come to die," sneered Empyrean Sundermount. Riding his supreme power, he charged at Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly as he tore open the void and entered. He didn't want to start a war in the Xuanma Plain. Empyrean Sundermount didn't hesitate and immediately followed in. He punched out at Ling Han, and the power of his fist transformed into a giant skull that seemed as if it wanted to swallow Ling Han whole. Ling Han stopped and turned around to face the attack. Bang! This time, Ling Han had only activated the 7th-rate combination talisman, increasing his strength by 2,000 times. But after taking 6 steps forward, his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. It was even more powerful than when he had used the 6th-rate combination talisman. He punched out, and that skull immediately exploded. Ling Han howled and charged at Empyrean Sundermount. "Old thief, obediently give up and be captured." Sundermount sneered. He released the planes in his body, adding boundless energy to them. 1, 2, 3, 4, He had actually released 13 planes, and all of them were of a higher level. Sure enough, Empyrean Sundermount had obtained more than 6 planes from Feng Wooding. It was just that he hadn't nurtured them to the extent that they could be used in battle. Thus, it was useless even if he released them. 13 high-grade planes were equivalent to at least 136-step cultivators working together. This wasn't a joke. Ling Han also released the plane power in his body, clashing head-on with his opponent. Peng! The void trembled, and a storm of energy was swept away and exploded, creating a magnificent sight. It had to be said that the power of a higher-level plane was extremely terrifying. Roughly 106th-step cultivators could match a 7th-step cultivator in terms of strength. In other words, Empyrean Sundermount's strength had at least doubled compared to when he had battled with Ling Han. But how many times had Ling Han's strength increased? Although he had only taken 6 steps, and his several 100,000 planes were still at the lower level, his strength had increased tenfold. Without needing to use the 6th-rate combination talisman, Ling Han already had the absolute upper hand, forcing Empyrean Sundermount to retreat again and again. What? Empyrean Sundermount roared into the sky, clearly furious and unable to accept this. After reaching the peak of the 7th step, his strength could no longer advance any further. Thus, he was still able to more than double his strength. This was incomparably astonishing. But even so, he was actually still unable to defeat Ling Han. A single 6 steps. How could he not be depressed and annoyed by this? All sorts of Empyrean techniques were activated. Empyrean Sundermount had lived for who knew how many epochs longer than Ling Han, and he had grasped countless techniques. But the difference in strength was too great. No matter how many techniques he grasped, it was useless. This was because techniques were all about the use of power. If the difference in strength was too great, everything else was useless. In just a few hours, Empyrean Sundermount had been suppressed by Ling Han. Let's go! Ling Han grabbed Empyrean Sundermount and headed towards the extraterritorial battlefield. This trip would take more than 2 hours, and Ling Han naturally couldn't activate his Empyrean symbol at all times. In any case, if Empyrean Sundermount didn't activate his Empyrean symbol, he wouldn't use it either. If Empyrean Sundermount used it, he would use it. In this way, his strength would always be able to suppress Empyrean Sundermount. He had originally wanted to pay a visit to Chong Yen and the other 3 old thieves, but he discovered that his current strength was only enough to suppress a 7-step Empyrean. Thus, he shouldn't be too greedy. The future was long, so there was no rush. Little brat, hurry up and let go of this Empyrean. Empyrean Sundermount's face turned green. If others saw his current appearance, how could he endure it? Ling Han naturally ignored him. A few days later, he arrived at the extraterritorial battlefield. During this time, he naturally fought with Empyrean Sundermount several times. But each time, Empyrean Sundermount was mercilessly suppressed. Scram! Ling Han tossed Empyrean Sundermount into the passageway leading to the main battlefield. Little brat! Empyrean Sundermount charged over, his hair fluttering in anger. Go to where you should be, Ling Han faintly said, sending Empyrean Sundermount flying back with a single punch. He stood at the passageway leading to the main battlefield, looking like an insurmountable mountain. Empyrean Sundermount viciously glared at Ling Han. After looking at him for a while, he resolutely turned around and shot towards the depths of the battlefield. Going in himself was better than being forced in by Ling Han. That was because he definitely couldn't resist Ling Han. If Lin Luo and the others saw him, he would lose all face. He would stay here for a period of time. He didn't believe that Ling Han would stay here forever. End of chapter. Chapter 3046. Under Ling Han's pressure, Poyu was forced to enter the main battlefield to face Frenzy. Ling Han didn't care whether Poyu would go all out to deal with Frenzy or just half-heartedly. He only wanted Poyu to enter the main battlefield, even if it was just for show. Because the more Poyu didn't want to face Frenzy, the more he wanted to do the opposite. He guarded the passageway to prevent Poyu from getting lucky and turning back. After guarding for a year, Ling Han finally returned. When Poyu appeared, Lin Luo and the others were naturally very surprised. What was going on? Why did Poyu come back? Poyu, why did you come back? Do you want to watch a show? Heavenly Venerable Myriad Shadows couldn't help but ridicule. He felt very wronged. He had just taken 7 steps and hadn't shown off his might yet. Instead, he was scared by Ling Han again and again. Now that the 5 Supremes had left the extraterritorial battlefield, he wanted to throw away his burden and quit. Poyu's face sank. Of course, he couldn't say that he had been forced to come here by Ling Han. At this time, he was actually a little grateful. If Ling Han had fought his way in, he would have naturally lost even more face. Since you're here, let's deal with Frenzy together. Lin Luo waved his hand. He considered the big picture and didn't want everyone to squeeze Poyu and let him leave again. To deal with Frenzy, the more people, the better. Poyu joined the battle. It seemed like he had to stay here for a while. He couldn't just watch. He vented his anger on Frenzy and started a fierce battle. Ling Han returned and quietly waited for the birth of his 3rd child. He waited left and right, but after a mere 10,000 years, his 3rd child was born. It was a boy. Ling Han was incomparably happy. This was his child. No one could take away his right to name him. He had been thinking about it all these years and naturally had already thought of a name. Ling Kong. It was very simple. He hoped that his son could grow up healthily and live every day in peace. He didn't have too many extravagant demands. It was that simple. Of course, Ling Han still prepared a large amount of cultivation resources for Ling Kong to ensure that his son would have the best conditions for his growth. This was, of course, a joyous occasion. Ling Han invited his family and friends and held a small banquet. The little guy's growth speed was inherited from Ling Shi. As the years passed, he hardly grew, and the speed at which his intelligence developed was also extremely slow. He just smiled foolishly every day, which made Ling Han sigh that he had given birth to a silly son. In the end, he was given a good beating by Yu Hongchang, who said that he was also like this when he was young. Ling Han was speechless. If there was anyone in this world that could make Ling Han unable to fight back, it was definitely his mother. Another few million years passed, and Ling Han decided to go to the immortal domain to take a look. 100 million years had passed, and he had to go and take a look at the situation. Moreover, he had created many new devices over the years, and he had to send them to the various planes to further increase the speed of his search. This time, he brought the women with him, and as if on vacation, after traveling through the planes, he came to the immortal domain. The result was very disappointing to Ling Han. After so many years of effort, the celestial kings had only found about 1% of the living beings, and they were still far from completion. Furthermore, in 100 million years, how many new lives had been born? This was practically endless. Ling Han distributed a lot of testing equipment. This was casting a long line to catch a big fish. He was sure that there would be results. He went to the immortal domain again, and went to each plane to see if there were any results as he distributed more testing equipment. As a person, one had to have a long-term vision. After arriving at a medium plane, Ling Han finally received good news. He had found such a person. This made Ling Han overjoyed, and he hurriedly went to take a look. This was a young man, very talented in martial art. Now that he had taken an 8th heaven celestial king as his disciple, he had already reached the peak stage of the ascending origin tier, and would soon advance into the celestial king tier. When he had first discovered him, he was only a child in his teens, and he could reach the peak stage of the ascending origin tier in 100 million years. This cultivation speed was not slow at all. This young man was called Batai. Ling Han taught him how to operate it, and both of them extended their divine sense into each other's mind to touch that spot of light. For Ling Han, he had already obtained the life code in his own ball of light, and there was no need to comprehend it again. Instead, it was up to Batai. A few days later, though Batai did not unravel the secret of his own ball of light, he handed all the information he had obtained to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded, and gave Batai a large amount of cultivation resources. This brat might have endless prospects in the future, and it would be good to nurture him. He began to cultivate in seclusion to digest the information he had obtained. It was very slow. Only after spending a whole few million years did Ling Han finally decipher the profound secrets within. He revealed a satisfied smile, and further completed the life code. Rumble. Inside of him, every plane of existence was undergoing dramatic transformations. Previously, there had only been grass growing no more than an inch tall, but now they were growing strong and healthy. They were now a foot long, and they were no longer pure green. Instead, there were green, blue, violet, red, and many other colors. There was a variety of colors. Though they were still plants, there was a huge improvement in the level of life. Every plane was exuding an exuberant aura of life, nourishing itself. This speed was comparable to him cultivating at full speed. If he obtained a few more pieces of life code, wouldn't his cultivation speed grow wings? The biggest headache for Ling Han was these planes inside his body. Though they gave him powerful battle prowess, they similarly hindered his advancement. But now, if this problem could be solved, then it would be perfect. Most importantly, these planes were growing on their own, and he did not need to spend the slightest bit of effort at all. Awesome! Ling Han did not take Batai as a disciple, but he still brought him to the Xuanma Plain. Here, Batai had more room for growth. He continued to travel through various planes. After this harvest, his confidence soared, and he naturally became more proactive. The heavens were really looking out for him. In the next millions of years, he met two such geniuses one after the other. One was called Ma Chenggao, and the other was Feyue. At first glance, there did not seem to be anything special about them, but one's divine sense was especially powerful, and the other had outstanding attainments in formations. Ling Han entered a long period of seclusion, and once again digested these two pieces of life code. Of course, he also brought Ma Chenggao and Feyue to the Xuanma Plain. No matter what, they were still worth nurturing. After Ling Han digested these two pieces of life code, the planes inside his body underwent another drastic change. These were two abnormally rapid evolutions, causing birds and beasts to appear on every plane. From plants to animals, this was naturally an incredibly violent evolution, and the changes were huge. Chapter 3047. Now, the plane in Ling Han's body was full of life, and life was emerging. Although they were just the most common beasts and birds, there were no intelligent beings, let alone the era of cultivation. Ling Han could not guide it. Although it was his, the plane was an independent entity. He could only choose to use the plane's power or nurture the plane's growth. He estimated that the plane's growth was at least 100 times faster than if he cultivated on his own. This was terrifying. Originally, he wanted to make all the planes reach a high level in a few hundred epochs, but now, a few epochs was enough. Of course, to Ling Han, a few epochs was an extremely extravagant thing. If the current situation continued, the entire origin world would definitely be devoured by madness in less than an epoch. However, Ling Han had his suspicions. Previously, he agreed with the world will's view, thinking that no matter how much he cultivated, he could not catch up to madness. Because madness had never stopped cultivating and had even devoured 4 super high-level planes. What did this mean? Just these 4 planes alone could provide madness with the power of at least 40 peak 7s. In addition, madness himself had transformed into a plane. After so many years, he had naturally reached a super high level, at least 50 peak 7s. If you were improving, so was madness. How could you surpass him? But as Ling Han grasped more and more life code, he believed more and more that he could surpass madness. When he grasped the complete life code, he would become a meta-world. Moreover, he would have more super high-grade planes than this meta-world, and his level would be even higher than this meta-world. Where did this confidence come from? In the void. The development of a plane needed a source of power, right? But this source was not the current origin world, but the void. The void was infinitely large, and could even accommodate a super high-level origin world without taking up any space. And what was there in the void? Intrinsic power. With this as a support, if he competed with madness, then it would not be about who started first, but the speed at which he absorbed this power. Of course, there was definitely an advantage to starting out fast. For example, Frenzy was now the #1 expert in the world, able to suppress more than 10 7-step supremes with his strength alone. Moreover, he was also able to fight against a super high-grade plane, and he even had the upper hand. We can definitely catch up. Ling Han clenched his fists. What he needed the most right now was more life codes, and this required him to find more people with clumps of light in their sea of consciousness. This could not be rushed. He could only sit and wait for the good news. Ling Han continued his seclusion, deducing the Empyrean symbol. This was equally important, as it would allow him to possess a greater combat strength in a situation where the original strength was the same. Every time he deduced an Empyrean symbol, Ling Han would stop and spend some time with his family. He also wanted to accompany Ling Kong as he grew up. He had missed out on many things with his first 2 children. Unfortunately, after the son grew up, he no longer had control over his parents. Very soon, Ling Kong left his home and traveled far and wide. Ling Han did not stop him. Instead, he formed a clone to accompany him. If his son really encountered an unresolvable crisis, he would naturally lend a hand. Although this was just a clone, it had the strength of a 6th-step expert. Could it not protect his son? After 900 million years, Ling Han deduced all the 5th-rate symbols. If they operated together, their power would increase by as much as 4,000 times. On the other hand, the plane in his body was also growing vigorously. Although it had not reached a high level, it had taken some steps. If it was compared to 10,000 steps, it had taken about 1 step now. The whole process would take several epochs. It could not be done quickly unless he could obtain more life codes. Ling Han worked even harder to create the testing device while cultivating. He did not need to pay attention to the plane in his body now. His cultivation speed, supported by several hundred Empyrean symbols, was very shocking. After staying for a while, he could not sit still anymore. Let's go and see Poyu. After learning of his decision, everyone had a strange expression. Little Han, is it true love between you and Poyu? The large black dog was startled. This is an illness, and it has to be treated quickly. Don't worry, we will not give up on you. Scram. Ling Han kicked out. He wanted to know if Poyu had escaped from the foreign battlefield. This time, he decided to go to the foreign battlefield and have a good fight with madness. Go, go, go. This time, you must bring us along, the large black dog said. That's right. If they become gay, we can't miss it. The old ginseng also shouted. Let's go, let's go. Rabbit also jumped on the side. Ling Han shook his head. All right, let's all go. His current strength was more than 10 times stronger than when he had gone to find Poyu the last time. He believed that even if Chong Yen and the other 4 supreme beings joined forces, they would not be a match for him. Ling Han led the others and set off, arriving at the Poyu dojo for the 4th time. Even Ling Han was slightly stunned. How thick was this Poyu skin? He actually built another dojo. Would an old tortoise die if he did not open a dojo? Ling Han shook his head and reached the top of the mountain with a single step. When they saw Ling Han, all the celestial kings trembled. They naturally still remembered that many hundreds of millions of years ago, Ling Han had charged over and started a battle with Poyu. Then, Poyu had disappeared for an extremely long time. Although Poyu had returned in the end, his expression was extremely ugly. They could easily guess that he had definitely suffered a great loss. And now, Ling Han had come again. Old Poyu, your grandpa is here again. Stop hiding, come out and play. The large black dog shouted at the top of his lungs. However, he hid behind Ling Han. After all, Poyu was a 7th-step supreme being, so how could he be underestimated? Boom, this voice, pushed by the power of a heavenly venerate, spread out in all directions. Its power was vast, and its speed was extremely fast. After a while, a cold humph rang out, and a supreme elite walked out. Of course, it was Poyu. He glanced at the large black dog. Although he did not use any power, under the powerful pressure, the large black dog still involuntarily shrank his head back. Old tortoise, why are you glaring at Grandpa Dog? The large black dog glared back at him. However, he pretended to be fierce in appearance and stuck his head out from behind Ling Han. Glare at me again, and I'll gouge out your dog, pay eyes. You're courting death. Poyu humphed coldly. Had the world been turned around now? Even a 2nd-step beast dared to shout at him. Boom, he unhesitatingly shot out a palm, which pressed down on the large black dog. Little Han, save me. The large black dog cried. Ling Han naturally would not stand idly by. If this strike landed, not only would the large black dog suffer, but the old ginseng, rabbit, and stone golems would also be affected. He flicked his finger. Pooh, a powerful force shot into the sky, and a hole instantly appeared in the large hand that Poyu had struck out. Chapter 3049. The Will of the Previous Yuan World. It seems to have communicated with you, Ling Han said. I want to know what it said to you. The 5 Supremes' expressions changed at the same time. This was their biggest secret. Don't even think about it. Chong Yen said immediately. So what if they were suppressed in the latrine pit? Ling Han had to stand there and constantly increase his power. Otherwise, how could he trap them? But in comparison, they were even more unwilling to reveal their secret. If Ling Han joined the competition, would they still be able to obtain that opportunity? Ling Han shifted his butt and sat more comfortably. There's no point in hiding it. After all, I've also come into contact with the world's will. What? Chong Yen and the other 4's expressions changed. However, a Supremes of the 7th step would definitely have some shrewdness. They all kept their composure. Ling Han continued fishing. If he wanted someone to reveal a secret, he had to reveal some information himself. Not only did I come into contact with the world's will, but I also chatted with it for a while. Moreover, it also let me see a scene where many life imprints were planted in your bodies, he said calmly. He stopped and quietly observed the 5's expressions. As expected, the expressions of the 5 people changed again. So what? Heavenly Lord Big Dipper said calmly as if he didn't care at all. Ling Han shook his head. You're really uncooperative. But it's fine. I love guessing. He revealed a thoughtful expression and said, "You're already at the peak of the 7th step. There shouldn't be many things that can move you. First, an increase in power. Second, a threat to your lives. Theoretically, you can't advance any further. You're also undying. That's impossible." However, when Empyrean Yellow Sand was killed, extermination was also torn to pieces. This proves that even a 7th-step supremacy's undying and indestructible has a precondition. If madness really devours the Yuan world, you won't be able to escape. But this in turn raises another question. Since your lives will also be in danger, why do you want to escape from the extraterritorial battlefield? This brings us back to the original topic. Perhaps you can still increase your power so that you can escape from this threat. Ling Han's words were slightly roundabout, but the logic was very clear. Therefore, even though there wasn't any substantial information revealed, Chong Yen and the other four's expressions continued to change. If he continued guessing like this, it was very likely that Ling Han would figure out something. Ling Han glanced at the 5 of them and decided to throw out a heavy bomb. Whirlcore. What? Immediately, Chong Yen and the other 4 were unable to maintain their composure and blurted out one after another. Their faces were filled with disbelief as they looked at Ling Han. How could Ling Han know such a secret? Ling Han laughed heartily. How about it? Let's be frank and have a good discussion. Chong Yen and the others were wily old foxes after all. They quickly calmed down. Tell me first, how much do you know about the World Core? Chong Yen asked. Fuck, how could he have known? It was all because the world will had spilled the beans, allowing him to catch this phrase. Ling Han naturally wouldn't admit it. He said, how much do you know? Don't try to trick me when you don't know anything. Since that's the case, there's nothing for us to discuss. How could Chong Yen and the others be fooled? All of them kept their mouths shut. Not talking? Ling Han smiled faintly. Do you want to be suppressed in a latrine pit for 10,000 years? In any case, we're immortal and untouchable. We're transcendent no matter where we go. Heavenly Sovereign Big Dipper sneered. Ling Han frowned inwardly. It looked like he could only humiliate these 5 old fogies for now. But if he wanted to make them truly afraid, it was still a little lacking. Unless he reached the 7th step and cultivated a super high-grade plane within his body, giving him the ability to kill someone at the 7th step, then he believed that one of the 5 would definitely compromise. Forget it, I can't be bothered to play with you guys anymore. Ling Han shook his head. He grabbed the 5 Supremes and flew towards the Outerium battlefield. This time, he'd send all 5 of them to the battlefield together. In just a dozen or so days, Ling Han arrived at his destination. With a wave of his hand, he tossed the 5 Supremes into the main battlefield's passageway. Do what you're supposed to do. If I catch you outside, you'll really have to prepare to stay in a latrine pit for 10,000 years. Ling Han said coldly. Chong Yen and the others glared at him, their hearts boiling with anger. But what could they do? They were too weak. Forget it. The 5 of them turned around and walked towards the depths of the main battlefield. When they arrived within the range of Lin Luo and the others' perception, they were naturally shocked. What was going on? Why were the 5 of them here again? Especially Poyu. Didn't you run away last time? Why did you come back? The 5 Supremes were naturally too embarrassed to explain. They immediately joined the fray, venting their anger on Frenzy. Ling Han thought for a moment, then walked into the battlefield's passageway. It had been a long time since he left the Outerium battlefield. It was time for him to go and take a look. Moreover, there were some old debts that had yet to be settled. When he arrived at the front lines, he just happened to run into the Frenzy Army's attack. They were a black mass that seemed capable of toppling mountains and overturning seas. On the Xuanma Plains side, everyone was extremely nervous. The Frenzy Army was growing stronger and stronger, while their numbers were decreasing. How could this continue? After this battle, how many people would never live to see the next day? Bang! At that moment, they saw a beam of light shoot over from the distance. It streaked across the top of the city walls and then entered the Frenzy Army. A scene that made their scalps go numb appeared. Amidst the flash of light, the Frenzy Army exploded one by one, transforming into a rain of blood. It had to be known that the composition of the frenzy army was extremely complicated. The lowest was a quasi-celestial, and the highest was a sixth-step celestial. But wherever that light flashed, both quasi-celestials and sixth-step celestials were transformed into a rain of blood. It was just one attack, but the entire frenzy army had been annihilated. There were only a dozen or so survivors. Which big shot had taken action? This was too terrifying. They all looked into the distance and saw a young man walking through the air. His slender body seemed to contain a mighty power that could suppress the heavens. It made them want to prostrate themselves in worship. That's Ling Han. He's back. Everyone was both excited and afraid. Back then, Ling Han had destroyed 90% of the frenzy army with one attack. Now that the king had returned, his strength had risen to a whole new level. He had taken care of them with one attack. Of course, this kind of helper was exciting, but it was also frightening. He was too strong. Was there anyone who could keep him in check? However, even more people were optimistic. Back then, Ling Han had been forced to leave by Chong Yen and the other four. Now that he had returned, with such friendship, how could he harm others? The end of this chapter. Chapter 3050. Brother Ling, long time no see. Lin Yu Lian greeted first. Brother Ling. Wu Haoyang nodded. In front of Ling Han's invincible battle prowess, he had to call him Brother Ling. Big brother. White Rice jumped up and acted as if he wanted to hug Ling Han. Shoo shoo shoo, isn't it disgusting? Ling Han hurriedly pushed him away. Xen Chi, who did not say anything and only looked at Ling Han. Ling Han also looked over, and a ball of flames suddenly leapt up in his eyes. Bingu, we'll have to settle the debt between us today. What debts do we have? Xen Chi, who pretended to be surprised and then nodded. That's true. You owe me so many favors, it's time to return them. Yes. Ling Han's gaze turned cold. Was this guy even more shameless than him? Brother Ling, you do have to thank Brother Xen, Lin Yulian said. What did that mean? Ling Han looked towards Lin Yulian. He had always held a very good impression and gratitude towards the Lin clan. In the past, if it weren't for the Lin clan repeatedly reaching out to him, perhaps he wouldn't have lived until today. At least, he wouldn't have been able to possess battle prowess that surpassed the peak stage of the 7th level so quickly. Thus, he was willing to listen to Lin Yulian. I only found out about it not long ago. Lin Yulian smiled apologetically at Ling Han. The reason why Brother Xian has always been against Brother Ling is actually because of the arrangements of my father and the other supreme martial artists. But Ling Han asked in a low voice. Because for a genius like Brother Ling, only by giving you enough pressure will you be able to improve and maintain your motivation at all times, Lin Yulian said. Ling Han was shocked. Was that really the case? Brother Ling, think about it carefully. Although Brother Xen has pressured you many times, when has he ever forced you into a desperate situation? Lin Yulian said again. Ling Han thought that Xen Chihu had pressured him. At the start, he had naturally sent him to execute the decapitation plan. However, because he had the ability to travel between planes, this mission was naturally daunting but not dangerous. It was only because Frenzy's subordinates were spies by his side that he was almost killed by Frenzy. You should know that when Lord Chong Yen and the others ruled that you were a traitor, Lord Xen Fu voted against it, Lin Yulian said, continuing to clear Xian Chihu's name. Indeed, Xen Chihu's actions were somewhat contradictory. Earlier, when Ling Han was fighting Feng Wuding, he had given up on defense and allowed himself to be attacked. Even Xian Chihu had shifted his attacks. Otherwise, even if he had killed Ling Han at that time, he could say that he couldn't stop in time. Something was not right. Ling Han then looked at Xen Chihu. When you first fought with me, you were filled with killing intent. This is definitely true. Xen Chihu smiled faintly. At that time, I really wanted to kill you. Because of this, Lord Lin Luo came to me and asked if I was willing to help carry out this plan. I agreed. However, I also told Sir Lin that if I participate, I definitely won't go easy. When I need to act, I won't be lenient. Otherwise, what kind of trash would I be able to raise? If even I, Xen Chihu, am inferior, How can I save the Yuan world? He crossed his arms, looking very arrogant. Ling Han didn't say anything else. In fact, he believed it in his heart. This was the only way to explain the Xian family's incomparably contradictory position. Moreover, because of his relationship with Xian Chihu, he had accumulated endless motivation. Otherwise, his cultivation would not have advanced so quickly. However, Xian Chihu's current appearance was too arrogant. I don't believe it, Ling Han said coldly. He released a boundless aura, and there was even a dense killing intent. It was almost tangible, causing people to feel pain all over their bodies. One had to know that the people here were all celestial venerables, but even they felt as if their bodies were being cut by knives. It could be seen how powerful Ling Han was, and how strong his killing intent was. Xian Chihu's expression also changed. Although he had the battle prowess of a venerable 7th step, he wasn't a venerable 7th step. His physique had not reached the level of immortality. If Feng Wuding could die, then he would also die. Ling Han, it's already come to this. There's no need for me to lie to you, he said loudly. I don't care if you lie to me or not. Since you've made me unhappy, then you have to bear the consequences. Ling Han charged out. Peng, his speed was too fast, and the space behind him instantly exploded. In an instant he appeared in front of Xian Chihu and punched him. Xian Chihu was instantly sent flying. So what if he had the battle prowess of a venerable 7th step? He hadn't reached the peak of the venerable 7th step. Moreover, so what if he had reached the peak of the venerable 7th step? As strong as Chong Yen and the others were, they would still be suppressed by Ling Han. Ling Han chased after him, his killing intent solidifying. He reached out with his right hand again, and endless power condensed into a sword that pierced towards Xian Chihu. Xian Chihu paled in fright. He couldn't block this attack, but he had to. But even if he couldn't block it, he had to. Otherwise, he would die. He roared and attacked with all his strength. Whatever secret technique, whatever celestial venerable symbol, he would use it, disregarding everything else. If he lost his life, then everything would be over. Lin Yu Lian, Wu Haoyang, and White Rice also hurriedly attacked Ling Han, wanting to stop him from killing. Unfortunately, back when Ling Han was still at the venerable 5th step, he could allow them to attack him without injuring him, let alone now. In a situation where they were at the same cultivation level, who could be a match for Ling Han? No matter how monstrous he was, it was impossible. Peng, peng, peng. The attacks landed on Ling Han's body and were all reflected. They had no effect at all. Furthermore, Ling Han only shook his fist, and Xian Chihu's defense was like ice meeting boiling water, immediately disintegrating. Shua, a sword attacked. Xian Chihu involuntarily closed his eyes. In that short instant, countless thoughts flashed through his mind, and in the end, they all transformed into a bitter smile. Why hadn't he felt the intense pain that he had imagined? Xian Chihu involuntarily opened his eyes and saw that Ling Han was looking at him with a smile, and that sword formed from the essence of power had already disappeared. Fuck, were you playing with me? Since you're playing with me, I'll play with you too. Only then can we be clear, Ling Han said indifferently. Xian Chihu involuntarily felt depressed. This was too realistic. He had almost died for himself just now. Lin Yu Lian and the other two heaved a sigh of relief. They had really been afraid that Ling Han would kill Xian Chihu. If that happened, who knew what kind of crazy things Xian Fu would do? Bang! Just at this moment, Ling Han suddenly punched Xian Chihu's nose. Even with Xian Chihu's physique, he couldn't bear it, and his nose immediately bled. He looked at Ling Han in shock, his face filled with innocence. What was this? Since you admit that you wanted to kill me the first time, how can I vent my anger if I don't beat you up? Ling Han said as he punched again and again. Under the suppression of his strength, Xian Chihu couldn't fight back at all. He could only be beaten. Lin Yu Lian and the other two wanted to persuade him, but after thinking about it, they didn't do anything. In any case, Ling Han wouldn't kill anyone, so they would let him vent his anger. Chapter 3051. Ling Han gave him a good beating. Although it proved that Xian Chihu had been acting, this guy really did want to kill him from the start. Most importantly, this guy's arrogant expression really made him want to be beaten up. After letting out a sigh of relief, Ling Han finally stopped and smiled in satisfaction. So what if he was at step 6? Xen Chihu's face was still swollen and he looked extremely pitiful. Ling Han. Xen Chihu said furiously. Ling Han glared at him. If you call me that again, I will beat you up for 2 more hours. Do you believe me? Xen Chihu was speechless. Who asked Ling Han to be so powerful? He could easily beat him up. Although there was no threat to his life, that didn't mean he didn't care about his face. Forget it. Come, let's drink. White Rice jumped out to smooth things over. The 5 geniuses gathered together and drank and chatted. They were all in high spirits. Of course, Xen Chihu wasn't in such a good mood. He kept touching his face as it hurt. Ling Han, you finally advanced 6 steps, and your battle prowess is truly too terrifying. Lin Yulian sighed. Back then, she had helped Ling Han resolve a huge problem, but now, even 10 of her wouldn't be Ling Han's match. One had to know that she was at the mid-stage of step 7, but that was her limit at step 6. Unless she reached step 7, she wouldn't be able to improve anymore. The higher one's realm, the harder it was to fight across stages, especially at step 6 and step 7. How strong are you now? Wu Haoyang asked. Back then, he had the ambition to fight with Ling Han, but now he knew that Ling Han was far stronger than him. Ling Han was very humble. I'm just a little stronger than a normal step 7. Xen Chihu immediately gritted his teeth. How could he only be a little stronger? He was the victim and had personally experienced Ling Han's strength. He was simply overpowered. Brother Ling, what do you plan to do next? Lin Yulian asked. Big brother, are we going to stay here? White Rice asked. Ling Han thought about it and shook his head. It would be a waste for him to stand guard here. As long as he was there, the defensive line here would not waver, but the key was the main battlefield. If the main battlefield fell, so what if the defense here was impenetrable? I want to enter the interior of Frenzy from here, he said slowly. What? The 4 Heavens favorites revealed looks of astonishment. This was way too crazy. That was the territory of Frenzy. Once they entered that place, they would no longer be able to extract the power of the ramen, and they would lose some of their combat strength for no reason. Apart from the undying 7 steps, wasn't this just courting death? Ling Han was very strong. They all admitted that he might be comparable to the older generation's 7 steps, or even surpass them. No one believed him. No matter how monstrous he was, he had to take the 7th step first because Frenzy himself was also a super monstrous genius. Brother Ling, don't be rash, Lin Yulian hurriedly advised. That's right, big brother. We need to think about this. White Rice also said. Ling Han smiled. Don't worry, Frenzy won't kill me so easily. His dimension power was self-contained, and he did not need to rely on Xuanma dimension. No matter where he fought, his combat strength would not be weakened. Hence, he dared to enter Frenzy's territory and take a look at what this super monstrous genius from the dimension of transformation was like. Lin Yulian and White Rice advised him, and even Xen Chihu pinched his nose and warned him. However, Ling Han had already made up his mind. He journeyed alone, 1 step at a time. Everyone stood on the city wall and watched him leave. They were both worried and excited. They were worried because Frenzy was too strong, and it was obvious that he was the strongest in the world. Ling Han was not a true 7 steps, and as long as he was not truly undying, he would have to tremble in front of Frenzy. They were excited because they had always been bullied by Frenzy, and now they could finally fight back. Feng Xiaoxiao, once a warrior leaves, can he come back? Ling Han strode forward. He was full of confidence. Step by step, he did not seem to be walking quickly, but each step covered a distance of billions of miles. In less than half a day, he entered a strange and dazzling world. It was dark here. He seemed to have entered a huge worm's nest. The ground beneath his feet was bumpy, and there were many protruding holes. The top of his head was also bumpy, and there were also many holes. It was dead silent here, and there was no movement at all. There were no living creatures, and there were no plants. It was like a barren land. Ling Han did not believe that if this was really a barren land, then it could not be called a dimension. He walked for a while more and finally he saw a different scene. A plant, let's call it a plant for now. It was about 100 feet tall, and it was completely black. It had leaves, but the leaves were in the shape of various weapons. It was extremely strange. There were also fruits, and they were extremely huge. They were about a foot long and half a foot thick, and they hung one by one. What was that? Celestial fruit? Ling Han walked over, his defenses already in operation. There were 4 light balls revolving around him, forming a triangular pyramid that could defend against all attacks. He reached out and pressed on a fruit. Pop! The skin of the fruit actually wriggled. Ling Han was surprised. What kind of situation was this? He pressed his fingers together like a knife and slashed down. With a slash, the skin of the fruit instantly broke open, and a large amount of liquid rushed out. Then, something that was only a foot in size also rushed out. Ling Han could not help but raise his eyebrows. This was the embryonic form of a frenzy monster. This thing was clearly still very young, and its strength was only at the 3rd heaven of Celestial King. However, it was already filled with ruthlessness, and it immediately bit toward Ling Han. Pa! Ling Han casually trampled it to death. There was no rain of blood from the sky. It was as if the heavens did not care at all. That was true. This plane was frenzy itself, and these were all soldiers that it had created. Did it need to be sad over the death of one? Ling Han's gaze swept across the surroundings. There were countless plants in the surroundings. Some were similar to this one, and some were like vines that climbed up the walls. Fruits hung down one by one, and as far as the eye could see, there was practically no end to them. Was this the place where frenzy had created its army? It did not appear out of thin air, but was nurtured like this. Ling Han humphed. With a slash of his finger, swift and fierce sword chi crisscrossed. One plant after another was cut down by him. This sword chi was also accompanied by supreme karmic fire, which burned these plants to ashes. Those fruits naturally could not avoid disaster, but the sword chi was too swift and fierce, and it directly cut the monsters inside to death. Of course, there were also some that escaped by luck, but they were turned into ashes in the following supreme karmic fire. Squeak! An ear-piercing sound rang out, and monsters could be seen crawling out of those holes on the ground and in the sky. These were obviously adult monsters, and all of them had advanced into the celestial venerable tier. They emitted powerful auras. As it turned out, after they were nurtured from the fruits, they had crawled into the holes to hide. When Frenzy gave the order, they all moved out in unison. End of this chapter. Chapter 3053. You're messing with my heart. Frenzy was no longer deep in thought. As long as I take you down, I can get all your secrets. Hong, the cave wall broke and an army charged in. Frenzy, do you think that this kind of trash can stop me? Ling Han said with a smile. Though it was a great army of 6 troops, in front of him, it was nothing at all. You will know, Frenzy said calmly. In terms of patience, it was better than anyone in the world. It had lived for 2 generations of the origin world, and its life was too long. Frenzy's army did not attack immediately. The 6 steps were actually merging together, 2 merging into 1, then merging again and again. Their numbers decreased, but the aura they emitted was getting stronger. They were rushing to break through to the 7th step. Even Berserk had its limits. It could only create creatures of the 6th step and couldn't touch the 7th step. But it used another method to let its subordinates have 7-step fighting power. They merged. Ling Han had seen this a long time ago, but this kind of fusion had a fatal weakness, and that was stability. It could not last for long. At most 3 days, the body would explode due to the terrifying power in it. Ling Han was fearless. First, his power far surpassed that of a normal 7-step. Second, this kind of fusion probably only had 7-step fighting power, but its physique was far from that. This was nothing to worry about. As long as Frenzy did not come out, Ling Han was not afraid of anyone. Soon, 7 fusion monsters were formed, emitting the aura of a 7-step fighting power. In addition, there were even more monsters fusing to create more 7-step monsters. Ling Han stood with his hands behind his back and said, Frenzy, let's talk about life. Don't you think being invincible is a boring thing? You have things to do now, but so what if you devour the origin world? How lonely will you be? Stupid ant, you haven't jumped out of that well, how would you know how big the world is? Frenzy said coldly. Huh, what did that mean? Ling Han's heart jumped, and he said, You mean you jumped out of this well and saw a more exciting world? You think I'll tell you? Frenzy sneered. Tell me about it. I think that you have held it in for so long, so you should really want to share it with someone, right? Ling Han said with a smile. If you are honest with me, I can also tell you the secret of my previous life. There's no need, Frenzy said coldly. I'm invincible, no secrets will affect me. Damn, it's really not easy to fool him. Ling Han sighed. He had to give up on the idea of getting information from Frenzy. With a loud roar, he punched out and attacked the Frenzy army. At this time, 9 fusion monsters had already formed. In other words, there were 9 Step 7 monsters, and they all charged toward Ling Han. Boom, the two sides began to fight. Ling Han was not afraid in the slightest. His body was surrounded by a defensive light shield, and as if his body wasn't damaged, when he punched out, the power of crushing 7 steps exploded. Bang, suddenly he punched through the chest of a 7-step monster, but there was a terrible light bursting out of its chest, forming a big explosion. The explosive force was truly terrifying. Ling Han was sent flying by the shock and crashed heavily into the cavern wall, directly shattering it into pieces. His figure retreated continuously, and only after he had crashed through 3 layers of the cavern wall did the force of the impact finally disappear. Ling Han gritted his teeth. The defense on his body had been directly cut down to 33 layers. It should be known that although this was a total of 100 layers, the defense of each layer was 10 times stronger than when he was at Step 5, equivalent to having 1,000 layers of defense. Now that 33 layers had been torn down, it meant that if he was still at Step 5, this blow would at least be able to seriously injure him, and it wouldn't be strange for him to be directly killed. Fortunately, Ling Han nodded in his heart. Fortunately, he didn't let his strength get to his head and run here when he was at Step 5. Now, he was not afraid of these monsters. With a thought, the defensive layer that had been blasted away was restored, and it was perfect. He rushed back, and as he waved his fists, a terrifying battle power boiled. Bang bang bang. 3 7-step fusion monsters exploded together, turning into a doomsday-like energy storm that sent Ling Han flying again. Powerful. Ling Han was speechless. 3 monsters exploded together, and more than 63 layers of his defense had been cut down. How could it be so powerful? He thought about it in his mind and immediately understood. There were many exploding monsters among these fusion monsters, and each one had fused with at least 10 of these monsters. Naturally, this power was terrifying. Around him, there were still Step 6 monsters fusing, but the number of exploding monsters was very small. This was very normal. Even if it was Frenzy, it should be extremely difficult to create a monster with the power of Step 7. Even if it could only explode once, it still broke some kind of limit, so how could it be produced on a large scale? However, Ling Han had no intention of continuing the battle. It was useless no matter how many of these monsters were destroyed. At most, it would only temporarily relieve the pressure on this battlefield. Not long after, the Frenzy army would regain its scale, and the battle would resume again. Then, before leaving, he would destroy to his heart's content. Ling Han charged out, trying his best to avoid the 7-step monsters. If he really could not avoid them, then he could only attack one. That way, even if he was hit by the shockwave of the explosion, it would not be able to tear through his defense. Without a true undying body, he had to worry about it. Ling Han sighed. His power was clearly much higher than Chong Yen and the others, but he had to be extremely careful when fighting these monsters, unlike Chong Yen and the others, who did not need to worry about their own safety at all. Bang bang bang. The caves here were destroyed one by one. Ling Han's focus was to destroy the plants. They seemed to be mother trees that could continuously produce monsters. If he destroyed them, he should be able to greatly slow down the pace of Frenzy's invasion. As expected, after he focused his attacks on the plants, Frenzy became obviously angry. Previously, it had not attacked Ling Han. It seemed that it had been restrained by Lin Luo and the others, or perhaps for some other reason. But now, it waved a tentacle and attacked Ling Han. But Ling Han did not cower. He chose to take it head-on. He wanted to know how terrifying a blow from frenzy was. With one blow, his whole body was immediately sent flying, crashing through 9 layers of caves along the way before stopping. He looked and could not help but be shocked. There were only 9 layers of defense left on his body. As long as the power of frenzy improved, or if its attacks were more concentrated, it would be able to follow up with another blow after another. Then, Ling Han's defense would still become extremely weak. With a thought, the defense layer was immediately replenished. In an instant, it went from dim and dull to dazzling. I'm not playing anymore. Ling Han's figure moved swiftly. If frenzy attacked, the situation would be completely different. The strongest in the world was still frenzy, firm and unshakable. Chapter 3054. Ling Han ran. Of course, Madness could not just watch as he came over to wreak havoc. After causing such great destruction, he could still leave just like that. He immediately waved another tentacle. Boom! The tentacle rose into the air with terrifying power. Ling Han ran very quickly. He did not want to fight Madness head-on. There was no future in doing so, and it would only cause him to be surrounded. If he was hit by that 7 steps fusion monster again, then he would really be heavily injured. Shwa! The tentacle swept past Ling Han's back. It was just a little short of hitting his back. You've entered my territory, and you still want to run? Madness laughed coldly. Boom! The ground in front of Ling Han immediately arched up, as if it had a life of its own, and turned into a wall. This was a plane, and it was also Madness's body. Naturally, he could change his own body at will. Peng! Ling Han crashed into it, and the wall immediately collapsed. However, Ling Han's speed could not help but slow down. Madness's attack had already arrived, and it was heading towards Ling Han. Ling Han turned around to face the attack. Madness's attack was too terrifying. Even if his defense was so strong, he had to block it. Even if one attack could not completely break through his defense, he still had to guard against it. Under the huge shock of the impact, Ling Han felt his 2 arms go numb, and his entire body was sent flying. Rumble! The terrain here changed drastically. The ground folded, and the path ahead had already disappeared, turning into a thick mountain. There was no way back. He could either find another path ahead, or kill his way through. Ling Han decisively chose to advance bravely. Since Madness could change his path ahead, of course it could change any place. This was the inside of his body to begin with, and he could change it however he wanted. Peng, peng, peng. He was like a god of destruction as he forcefully opened up a path. However, the ground here was incomparably sturdy, and could even block an attack from 6 paces away. Although Ling Han's current strength had already far surpassed that of 6 paces away, the ground was simply too thick. A single punch from Ling Han could create a hole that was over 100 miles deep, but how thick was it? This greatly restricted Ling Han's speed, and the frenzied tentacles naturally caught up with him easily. Ling Han turned around to face the attack. Peng! The tentacle lashed out, instantly sending him flying. However, borrowing the power of this attack of frenzy, Ling Han forcibly shattered a large area behind him. His face was a little flushed. This attack had almost shattered his defense. Even so, his internal organs still suffered some damage, which made him feel a little uncomfortable. However, there was no time for him to adjust. He immediately restored his defense layer and continued to kill. Frenzy chased him all the way while Ling Han ran for his life. He felt like he was walking on the edge of life and death again, which made him understand things constantly, like flowers blooming in the void. After escaping with his life this time, he would definitely make great progress. He had not experienced such a feeling for a very long time. As his strength reached the peak of 7 paces, the only thing that could threaten his life in this world was frenzy. He continuously withstood the frenzied bombardment, and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. By the second day, the skin all over his body had split open, and blood gushed out, dyeing his entire body red. The speed at which he returned was too slow. Originally, he had only spent half a day to kill his way back, but now it had already been a day, and he had only rushed halfway. There was still one more day. Ling Han gritted his teeth. This was abnormally arduous, but if he could not endure it, he would die. Under the threat of death, he dug further into his potential, and endless power surged out from his body, supporting him to continue persevering. Frenzy was also shocked. If Ling Han was at 7 paces, then so be it, but he was clearly only at 6 paces, and did not have an undying and indestructible physique, so how could he persist for so long under its frenzied bombardment? This kind of person could not be left alive. Its attacks became more and more violent. Previously, it had only been 1 tentacle lashing out, but now it had become 2, and after another half a day, it had increased to 3. This additional tentacle was not only a change in number, but also a great increase in power. The 3 tentacles lashed out wildly, and the attacks were as violent as the tide. Boom! There was also a mental attack that condensed into a heavenly spear, piercing towards Ling Han, wanting to destroy his consciousness. However, Ling Han's body had millions of planes, and each plane had evolved into life. Even if it was just an ordinary bird, beast, or even a plant, it still had a trace of consciousness. When these consciousnesses were combined, how powerful were they? Frenzy's mental attack came over, but it was caught by these consciousnesses, disintegrating bit by bit. When it finally reached Ling Han's consciousness, it was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and no longer had any destructive power. As strong as Frenzy was, there was a limit. Frenzy, I'll remember this. It won't be long before I suppress you, Ling Han said as he left, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. There won't be a next time, Frenzy said darkly, and waved its 4th tentacle. If it could not kill Ling Han this time, then when he reached the 7th step and obtained an undying body, there would be nothing it could do. Of course, if it could devour the entire origin world, then its power would reach a whole new level, and killing someone at the 7th step would be possible. Ling Han howled, breaking through all the way like a mad demon. Bang! Diagonally ahead, a passage appeared. Even Frenzy could not affect the passage between the 2 worlds. At this point, it was finally a smooth road. Ling Han laughed coldly. He did not walk towards that passage, but continued to charge forward. He had not reached the passage yet. Ling Han said in his heart. He had come all the way here, and he knew very well how many journeys he had gone through. The passage between the 2 worlds had appeared here. It was too early. Therefore, this had to be fake. If Ling Han really had to take this passage, then it would not lead to the Xuanma plane, but to the interior of Frenzy's body. He might not be able to walk out in his lifetime. This was a trap that Frenzy had set for him. Since it was the interior of Frenzy, it was too easy to create such an environment. But after advancing another 300 feet, another passage appeared in front of Ling Han, and there were 2 of them. Ling Han hesitated slightly. According to his calculations, the passage between the 2 worlds should be here, but there were actually 2 of them. One of them had to be fake, forged by Frenzy. If he walked into it, he might be unknowingly led into the interior of Frenzy. Which one was it? He would know after walking for a while. Anyway, the spatial passage was only so long. After walking for a while, he should reach the Xuanma plane. Then, if he could not reach the end of the passage, he would immediately turn back. He chose the passage on the right. Xiu, he leapt into the passage. In just 2 or 3 steps, a familiar sky appeared in front of him, and a familiar power rushed towards him. This was an aura that belonged to the Xuanma plane. Chapter 3055. He's out. Ling Han fell out, but he did not stop. Even if madness would be suppressed by the Xuanma plane from here on out, the combat power that he could unleash was still terrifying. He could not be careless. He sped forward and ran for another few tens of thousands of miles before stopping. After arriving here, he was no longer in madness territory. It was rather difficult for him to track Ling Han's whereabouts. Ling Han lay on the ground, panting. He had already overestimated madness, but he had still miscalculated. As expected of the number 1 scourge in history. He was too strong. If I want to fight against madness, I must deduce the plane in my body to a higher level. Otherwise, my body's defense will not be able to withstand it. Ling Han looked at the gray sky. In the two-realm battlefield, the sky was dark and oppressive. The harvest this time is not small. I destroyed many mother trees, which can reduce the pressure on this battlefield. And in the end, Madness should have used a lot of power to chase after me. It will have a positive effect on the main battlefield. Although I did not talk much with Madness, I did reveal some secrets. What is the core of the world? Does it exist? Chong Yen and I know that there is such a thing. It was revealed by the will of the previous origin world. But I am full of doubts about this fellow. This mumbling sounds like it accidentally spilled the beans. It seems to be very real, but it has an even more confusing effect. If this so-called world will is lying, then there might not be such a thing as the core of the world. If this deduction is true, then what is the purpose of deceiving me and Chong Yen? Also, Madness is looking down on me like a frog at the bottom of a well. What is the meaning behind it? Could it be that the void is so big that there is a second, a third, or even more origin worlds? Ling Han was shocked. Could it be that the origin worlds were like planes, one after another without end? Come to think of it, compared to the void, the Yuan world was indeed pitifully small. It was not impossible to say that there were several or even more Yuan worlds in the void. Things are getting more and more confusing. Just what is the delirium and the world will plotting, and what role does extinction play in all of this? Ling Han mumbled to himself, but this was obviously not something he could figure out by hugging his head. Hence, he quickly climbed to his feet and decided not to think about these things for the time being. Strength was the way to go. As long as one had enough strength, one punch would be enough to settle everything. At most, 2 punches would be enough. Ling Han returned to the stronghold of this battlefield, and when they saw his bloodied appearance, Lin Yu Lian and the others were all shocked. Frenzy was indeed frenzy. Even someone as strong as Ling Han was in such a sorry state. It was worthy of its title as the #1 monster that brought chaos to the world. And Ling Han was also very amazing. As a 6th step, he could actually kill his way back to Frenzy's base. This should be something that even a 7th-step powerhouse could not do. Ling Han briefly explained the situation, but did not reveal the details of his conversation with Frenzy. He did not want Lin Yu Lian and the others to be suspicious for no reason. Their focus should still be on cultivation. When can you break through to the 7th step? He asked. Lin Yu Lian and the others shook their heads. Breaking through to the 7th step was easier said than done. Without the accumulation of a few epochs, it was impossible to break through to the 7th step. Up until now, this Yuan world had only produced a few 7th steps. Furthermore, it was because of the Frost Plains core that Thousand Shadows and Golden Silkworm had taken the last step. Otherwise, there would have been 7 sovereigns. If these 4 wanted to reach the 7th step as soon as possible, they might have to hope that the destruction of the Xuanma plane would contribute another plane core. Ling Han did not ask any more questions. He left the extraterritorial battlefield and prepared to walk around the various planes to see if there were any new harvests. As long as the plane in his body grew, he would truly have the qualifications to fight against Frenzy. Even if he was still not a match for her, at least he could guarantee that he would not die or be injured. Ling Han first recuperated from his injuries. Fortunately, it did not hurt his bones, so he quickly recovered. He set off and went back to meet with everyone before beginning his journey across plains. After traveling through plains and arriving at a low-level plane, Ling Han received a piece of news that made him frown. 300,000 years ago, there had indeed been a person who met Ling Han's requirements. However, after just 70,000 years, he had suddenly disappeared. No one knew how he had disappeared. It was as if he had never existed. Ling Han did not believe that it must have been some powerhouse who had taken him away. However, there was a 1st step heavenly venerable guarding this place. For him to not be able to detect him at all, the other party's cultivation had to be at least 3rd step. A 3rd step supremacy had appeared in a low-level plane? This was impossible unless the other party had come from another plane. That was worth pondering. Had the other party happened to pass by and discovered that the candidate had outstanding talent in martial art, So he had taken him in as a disciple and left without saying a word? Or had the other party gone after the light spot in the candidate's spiritual sea? If it was the former, then it would be fine. If it was the latter, then there would be a big problem. Ling Han traced back time to 230,000 years ago. He had indeed seen a young man here who had suddenly disappeared. He set the timeline to the day when that young man had disappeared and looked carefully. He saw that the young man was cultivating, but suddenly he revealed a shocked expression, and then disappeared. Ling Han seemed to have seen a big hand grab out, but it was too blurry. He wanted to see it clearly, but there was no way. Too much time had passed, and the person who had made a move was too powerful. He had shrouded heaven's secrets and made time unable to record him. However, even if he had only seen a hand, Ling Han could be sure that this person was extremely powerful. He had to be at least a 5th-level heavenly venerate. Ling Han didn't make a big fuss and went to the next plane. However, the person he was looking for wasn't here. After passing through 937 planes, he finally found another person who met the requirements. After obtaining the information about the light spot in that person's spiritual sea, Ling Han decided not to send this person to the Xuanma plane first. Instead, he would stay and pretend that nothing had happened. Passing through planes was very time-consuming. Except for special people like Ling Han, who else would need hundreds or thousands of years, or even longer? Therefore, if someone was also looking for a person with a light spot in their spiritual sea, that person would be slower than him and would come looking for him. Wait. He had to snatch the person back. Ling Han sat quietly at the side. He restrained all his aura. Given his current height, no one would be able to discover his existence unless madness came personally. Another 90,000 years passed. Ling Han suddenly sensed a powerful aura surging over. Chapter 3057. Annihilation did not reply, only increasing the intensity of his attacks. At this time, no matter what he said, the more wrong he would be. It was better not to say anything. Then let me analyze it. Ling Han said as he fought back. Right now, the only thing that could threaten him in this world was madness. Even the previous annihilation's true form could not suppress him. According to the timeline, you first gave Chong Yen and the others life seeds and revealed some secrets to them, letting them know of the existence of the core of the world. According to the information you revealed, this should be able to help them advance 8 steps. Otherwise, Chong Yen and the others would not be so crazy. But what I got from madness is that it does not know of the existence of the core of the world. Although we are enemies, I am more willing to believe madness's words now. So, you must be lying. The problem is, why did you lie to Chong Yen and the others? What benefits does it bring you? Ling Han stopped, looked at Annihilation and smiled. Are you willing to answer my doubts? You are very smart and even more daring, Annihilation said. I originally thought that this secret would not be revealed until Chong Yen and the others died, but I did not expect you to be so daring as to seek confirmation from madness. If I had known, I would not have deliberately revealed it to you. Although she had the appearance of an absolute beauty, now her black hair danced wildly, and there was even a terrifying power entwined in her hair. An energy storm formed, and a single strand of her hair could really kill 6 steps. She was extremely powerful. Annihilation. She shouted softly, and pushed out with her jade-like hands, sending out a force that turned into a mountain, pressing down on Ling Han. Ling Han punched out and peng, the mountain immediately collapsed, but he also slid back, slightly surprised. Annihilation had used some kind of secret technique to condense the scattered force into one. Thus, the power of the attack had increased by many times. Fortunately, Ling Han was surrounded by layers of energy, and this only eliminated 14 layers. Compared to madness, the difference was obvious. Ling Han continued, since you have already taken over this body, but deliberately left a part of your consciousness in the core of the previous Yuan world, what is your goal? Did you deliberately say those few words to me? Or do you want to use the power there to do something to me? Back then, the power there was very strange. It could ignore his defense. Perhaps only the origin world could do this. This was also the reason why extinction, had to split a part of his consciousness there. Hidden fragrance plunder vanity. Now that I think about it, you should be trying to do something to me, and your target should be the speck of light in my sea of wisdom. Am I right? Ling Han looked at extinction. Annihilation attacked several times before saying coldly, "Not bad, you are very good at guessing." Ling Han shook his head. "I wouldn't have guessed. You exposed it yourself." If Mieju did not kidnap the person he was looking for, Ling Han would not have thought of this. This was a completely unrelated matter. How could he have made the connection? Of course, on the other hand, Ling Han had unlocked the secret of having a life imprint in his body. "You've done so much for the sake of advancing to the 8th step, right?" Ling Han asked again. Annihilation did not speak. He only sneered and attacked again and again. "You even lied to me about joining forces with you. Do you think I'm a fool?" Ling Han asked again. He frowned slightly. At that time, besides peeking at the secret of the mass of light in his sea of wisdom, did Annihilation leave behind any other tricks? This kind of trick could suddenly make him lose his combat power or control him. But Ling Han immediately shook his head. The power of existential plane in his body surged. This power surpassed any kind of intrinsic power, but he did not find anything strange at all. It should be impossible for Annihilation, whose strength was similar to his, to be able to set up some tricks in his body without him noticing. Since you've guessed my identity, I can't let you live." Annihilation let out a long howl. His black hair danced wildly, turning into arrows that shot towards Ling Han. Bang bang bang. These strands of hair hit Ling Han's body, causing the defensive layer to explode. Light flashed wildly, and the defensive layer was quickly broken down layer by layer. But with just a thought from Ling Han, a new defensive layer immediately formed. As long as this power did not reach the level of crushing Ling Han, then it would definitely not be able to break through Ling Han's defense. Ling Han shook his head. "I didn't guess your identity. I just removed the first layer of your disguise." His eyes burned as he stared at Annihilation. "Who are you? Don't tell me you're some world consciousness. You can fool a ghost." The other deliberately pretended to be angry out of humiliation in order to cover up and prevent Ling Han from thinking further. "I'm the director of the television station." Annihilation sneered. She was clearly in a fierce battle, but she was still indescribably beautiful and pleasing to the eye. She did not reply and only attacked fiercely. Although she believed that Ling Han would never be able to guess her identity, talking to Ling Han would not benefit her at all. Naturally, there was no need to reply. "If you don't want to talk, then I'll beat you up and make you spill all your secrets." Ling Han roared and waved his fists. All the 5th-rate runes were activated, and his strength increased by 4,000 times. This was too terrifying. Even someone as strong as Annihilation could only parry. As long as she received a punch, she would be sent flying. She was no match for him at all. In this present world, only frenzy could contend with Ling Han in strength. Ling Han chased after her and punched Annihilation in the face. He did not care what kind of peerless beauty she was. As long as she was an enemy, gender did not matter. Bang bang bang. Ling Han punched again and again. He wanted to suppress her and force her to spill her secrets. "Wishful thinking," Annihilation said coldly. Her figure moved, and her black dress fluttered as she started to break out of the encirclement. Ling Han naturally would not let her go, and his attacks became even more ferocious. He went all out, and his strength could be said to be incomparably violent. With one blow, a few pieces of clothing were sent flying. Annihilation looked at her arm. A piece had been torn there, revealing her snow-white jade arm. Her pretty face was instantly filled with embarrassment. Previously, she had been able to protect her clothes with ease, but now that Ling Han's explosive power was too terrifying, she could not take care of it. Ling Han was also slightly taken aback, but he immediately recovered his fighting spirit. Enemies did not matter if they were men or women. He had no evil thoughts in his heart, so what did he need to worry about? He attacked again. Bang bang bang. Under his furious attacks, Annihilation looked even more wretched. But 7 steps was 7 steps, after all. How could she not have some tricks up her sleeve? When that black dress was about to be torn to shreds, layers of black mist appeared over her body, wrapping her up. It seemed to turn into clothing, but also like a shield. Ling Han was shocked because he immediately realized that this black mist was not so simple. It had a powerful repellent effect, and all his attacks would be swept to the sides, making it difficult for her to touch his strength. Chapter 3058. For 7 steps, there was no difference in the strength of the attack she received. In any case, her physique wasn't bad, so it didn't matter. But now that extinction was breaking out of the encirclement, the situation was different. Originally, Ling Han could suppress her with a single strike, but now that the attack landed on her body, the power was dispersed, and the power she received was pitifully small. Naturally, it couldn't stop her anymore, and she forcibly broke out. Interesting, Ling Han thought. He set up 100 layers of energy shields on himself, each layer dissipating the attack he received. Even someone as strong as Frenzy couldn't hurt him with a single strike. Right now, Extinction was using another method, which was to weaken the power of the attack it received. This was also an excellent defensive method. It could be used as a reference. Ling Han said in his mind. He would never be arrogant and conceited, nor would he be complacent. When this battle was over, he definitely had to study Extinction's defensive method. It was really worth learning. However, Extinction was almost powerless now, so she naturally couldn't be stopped. She repeatedly broke out of the encirclement. Ling Han could only leave the void first, sending away the person with the ball of light in his mind. This was Extinction's target, and if he was sent away, Extinction's trip would be considered a complete failure. She was also tricked out of some information by Ling Han. Though her true identity wasn't exposed, the first layer of her disguise was exposed. Ling Han. Extinction called out harshly. She didn't have Ling Han's ability to travel between planes. Once this person left the plane, she couldn't track him anymore, and completely lost the other's senses. Ling Han picked his ear and indifferently said, "No need to be so loud, I'm not deaf." Extinction looked at him darkly and shouted, "Hand over the person." Hee, don't forget, you stole my person first, and now you want me to hand my own person over to you. Who the hell are you? Ling Han scoffed. Was it just because you were beautiful? The Empress and Hu Niu weren't inferior to her in the slightest, so how could Ling Han be affected by her? Have you ever thought about the consequences of going against me? Miju asked. You can rival me, but what about your family? I remember you have several wives and children. She was a loner, so she could do whatever she wanted without any scruples. Ling Han frowned, and his eyes suddenly flashed with killing intent. I can catch ghosts. Who am I afraid of? Originally, he had only wanted to suppress Annihilation. After all, she was no longer the great devil of the past, and he did not know who had taken over her body. But now, the other party actually used his family to threaten him. This made Ling Han want to kill them. When I take 7 steps, you'll be the first one I kill, he said word by word. Annihilation couldn't help but be overwhelmed by his aura. After being stunned for a moment, he laughed out loud. I'm immortal. Even the impact of the origin world's collapse can't kill me. What makes you think you can do that? I'll give you 3 days to consider. 3 days from now, if the person I want appears here, then I will act as if nothing has happened. Otherwise, don't blame me for starting a massacre. She turned around, tore open a spatial rift, and left. Ling Han did not chase after her. Even Frenzy could not kill 7 steps, so it was naturally impossible for him to do so. Moreover, Annihilation was far stronger than Chong Yen and the others. He could not even suppress her. This time, it could be said that both sides had suffered some losses. Ling Han had not been able to get her back, and Annihilation had not been able to snatch her away. I have to hurry. Ling Han continued to the next plane and continued to travel. He wanted to find more people who had a ball of light in their sea of consciousness so that he could completely decipher their life code. However, there were far too few people like this. After a round of searching, Ling Han had gained nothing. After returning to the Xuanma plain, Ling Han took a break and spent some time with his family. The threat of annihilation was very real. She was only one person and she was immortal. She could do whatever she wanted without any scruples. Thus, Ling Han began to move. He sent his entire family to a lower plane to temporarily settle down. Unfortunately, the family could not produce a second person with a battle prowess at 7 steps. Otherwise, they could share a lot of the burden for Ling Han. Ling Shi and Fu Tianxing were still stuck at 4 steps. It was too difficult to cross from 4 steps to 5 steps. Even Ling Han had relied on a fragment of the plane core to cross over. Now, the only super high-level plane in the world was the Xuanma plane. How could he shatter it and give it to them? Ning Haixin's fierce impulse could not be repeated. She was now at 2 steps. She was far from 7 steps. Ling Han did not stop studying the ball of light in his sea of consciousness. He had only deciphered the life code within it. In fact, there was more information, and there should be more secrets hidden within. Ghost, fate, and immortal path. Perhaps this was why he was so awesome in alchemy, and because of this, Ning Haixin had a strong affinity with him. Since he could not find a new life code, he naturally could not waste time. After all, there might be a huge treasure inside. Ling Han immersed himself in this kind of research day and night. Of course, he did not neglect his cultivation. But at the celestial venerable level, it was almost impossible to make rapid progress in cultivation. Were there any great medicines or things like the plain core now? He could only do it step by step. Ling Han had already reached the last step. Thus, it was extremely difficult to reach the peak of 6 steps. And from the peak of 6 steps to 7 steps, that was even more difficult. Tens of thousands of years passed, but Ling Han had gained nothing. He thought about it and gathered Ning Haixin, Ba Tai, Ma Chenggao, and the others together. Since the resonance of 2 people could break the secret of the ball of light, then what kind of miracle would happen if more people resonated? There were a total of 8 people. They intertwined their divine senses and lit up the ball of light in their minds. Boom! Ling Han felt his body shake, and he instantly felt a sharp pain. Ah! Ning Haixin and the others held their heads, revealing expressions of pain. Ning Haixin was fine, but Ba Tai, Ma Chenggao, and the others all bled from their orifices and almost died. This impact was too fierce. It directly attacked their minds as if it was going to shatter them. Ling Han was also shocked. Then he thought about it and couldn't help but reveal a happy expression. When the 8 people's balls of light resonated, he seemed to see a miniature version of the origin world. On one of the planes, there were 8 spots of light shining, and on a plane 17 levels away, there was a weak spot of light also shining. Was this the 9th person who had a ball of light in their minds? Ling Han immediately set out and came to this medium plane. He narrowed down the range according to his memory and then enlisted many celestial king tier forces to search. Naturally, he relied on the testing device that he and Wally had created together. But even if he narrowed down the range, this was still a very, very large area, and it covered billions of living beings. How small was the probability of finding a specific person here, who might not even be a person? Ling Han did not lack patience. As he waited, he cultivated. In any case, it would not delay him. Chapter 3059. The Wang Clan of Thousand Water Town. This was a very powerful clan in the area, with a severing mundane ancestor in charge. Only the Li clan could rival the Wang clan. The 2 clans competed with each other, and would join forces to eliminate forces that could threaten them. In these hundreds of millions of years, though the 2 clans had some conflicts, they lived together in harmony. However, on this night, the Wang clan flowed with blood. Young Master, the Ancestor, Patriarch, and the others all died in battle. You are the only hope of the clan, please leave quickly. An old servant said to a youth on his knees, tears streaming down his face. The youth looked only 15 or 16 years old. He was very stubborn, his eyes flashing, and he said, "There are no cowards in the Wang clan that would flee without a fight. I would rather die and be buried with great-grandfather, father, and the others." "Young master, you can't. The old servant urged, but the youth was determined and was not moved at all. "Young master, I have offended you. The old servant moved. Pa! A palm strike landed on the youth's neck, and he fainted. The old servant dug a hole and buried the youth inside. He had just sprinkled leaves on it when he listened, and then his expression changed drastically. Young master, you are the last of the Wang clan, please live on. The old servant knelt and kowtowed a few times, and suddenly released a long howl. His figure spread out and he quickly left. Shio, shio, shio. Immediately, 5 figures pounced, chasing after the old servant. Old man, you can't escape. Quickly hand over the remnants of the Wang clan, and maybe we can spare your life. 6 people, 1 fleeing and 5 chasing, soon disappeared without a trace. After 3 days, pung, the ground broke open, and the youth suddenly dashed out. His name was Wang Chuanhe, and he was the only son of the Wang clan patriarch of Thousand Water Town. His eyes were red, as if they could spit fire. Uncle Chi must have drawn the pursuers away for my safety, Wang Chuanhe said to himself. The pursuers are so powerful, and Uncle Chi is definitely dead now. I can't go and die again. The youth calmed down. I am the only one left in the Wang clan. If I go and die again, then the great hatred of the Wang clan will never be avenged. Li Jingchu, you are really, really ruthless. Wang Chuanhe gritted his teeth. The reason why the Wang clan was annihilated was because of the Li clan. But hadn't the Wang family and the Li family always been evenly matched, and neither could do anything to the other? This matter began 3 years ago, when Wang Chuanhe met the granddaughter of the Li family's second elder, Li Jingchu. As a young man, he fell in love with her at first sight. He did not expect that the other party would also have a good impression of him. After a while, the two of them quietly walked together. In the end, the young man mustered up the courage to confess to his family, but he was reprimanded. Although the Wang clan and Li clan couldn't be considered enemies, they had always been competing with each other, and there was no lack of dirty dealings between them. How could they possibly unite by marriage? Furthermore, the future head of the clan was such an important figure. But Wang Chuanhe steeled his heart. Coincidentally, the Li clan also sent someone over. They said that it would be better to fulfill this marriage. From then on, Wang Chuanhe and the Li clan would become one family, helping and supporting each other. In the end, the Wang family could only compromise and agree to this marriage. But on the day of the wedding, all the important figures of the Wang clan were poisoned, and the Li clan who came to attend the wedding also bared their fangs. They went on a killing spree, killing all the important figures of the Wang clan in one night. What if he headed towards King Xian's manor in the city and saw that there was a queue at the entrance? There were also people continuously walking out from inside, shaking their heads and sighing. Sigh, is there really someone who can pass that test? It doesn't test one's talent in martial art, and it doesn't test one's ability in martial art. How exactly can one pass? How strange. The people who came out were still complaining, but it didn't affect the enthusiasm of the people queuing outside. If this test was passed, the rewards would be too great. What kind of test is it? Someone in the queue asked. Put something on your head, and you don't have to do anything. After about 10 breaths, it will tell you that you didn't pass and you can leave, the person who came out said. Hearing this, Wang Chuanhe felt a sense of hope, but he also felt that it was extremely uncertain. His talent in martial art wasn't bad, but it wasn't top-notch either. At least, there were a lot of people who were better than him. Therefore, if it was a test of martial art talent, it was impossible for him to pass. Therefore, he had a little more confidence in himself, but since so many people couldn't pass, he naturally didn't have any confidence. TSK, what a joke. Even beggars are here to try their luck. Chapter 3061. Are you trying to go back on your word? Wang Chuanhe said in his heart, you are already a celestial king, who else can be called a big shot? You are clearly going back on your word. But how could he dare to vent his anger on a celestial king? There was no need for the opponent to do anything. Any random cat or dog from the residence could kill him. He was young after all, and when he thought like this, his expression naturally showed on his face. Ma Xianwang smiled faintly. He naturally knew what Wang Chuanhe was thinking, and the truth was, he was also very surprised. A powerful Empyrean had gone through so much trouble just to find a person who couldn't be any more ordinary. He could not see what was so special about Wang Chuanhe that a celestial lord would pay so much attention to him. If not for his relationship with Ling Han, he would have killed Wang Chuanhe long ago if he dared to have such emotions. But now, he could only think about it. He knew how important this matter was to Ling Han. He was just about to speak, but he was startled because he had already received a voice transmission from Ling Han. He hurriedly stood up and respectfully said, "Greetings, Lord." Wang Chuanhe was shocked. There really was an existence even more awesome than Ma Xianwang. He felt his vision blur, and there was already one more person in the courtyard. He was very young, and his face was like jade. His hair was black, and it was not tied up with a crown. It was slightly fluttering, and there was an indescribable elegance to it. "Greetings, Lord." He suddenly had a flash of inspiration, and knelt down towards Ling Han. Ling Han stretched out a finger and lightly pressed on Wang Chuanhe's forehead. He immediately discovered the existence of a dot of light in Wang Chuanhe's sea of consciousness. This was the person he was looking for. Wait, Ling Han was suddenly startled. He discovered even more things. Bloodline resonance. This was actually his descendant. How could this be? This was just a mid-level plane. How could his descendant appear here? No, it was indeed possible. When the 5 great supremes had revolted, Ling Shi, Ling Jianshui, and the others had all been captured, and the descendants of the Ling family had scattered in all directions. Although most of them had fled to various corners of the Xuanma plain, it was possible that one of them had escaped to this place. It was very difficult to cross 17 plains, but after so much time had passed, it was not impossible. The Ling family had been prosperous for a time, and there were always some supreme treasures passed down that could allow them to travel through plains. After arriving here, the descendants of the Ling family had settled down, but it was possible that this branch of the Ling family's bloodline had suffered a heavy blow when they had passed through the mortal plane. As a result, their elites had all died out, and the descendants could only appear in the severing mundane tier. Not long ago, they had even suffered a calamity of annihilation. Ling Han was instantly enraged, but after thinking about it, he decided to let Wang Chuanhe deal with it himself. "You've worked hard," he said to Ma Xianwang. "It's my duty, my duty." Ma Xianwang didn't dare to take credit for himself and said modestly. In fact, as long as he had a relationship with Ling Han, it would be equivalent to him obtaining a talisman to escape death. Which immortal king or even sky sovereign would dare to make a move against him? This favor was greater than the heavens. Ling Han nodded and said, "You may go about your business first." "Yes, my lord." Ma Xianwang hurriedly left obediently. Though he was very curious as to why Ling Han was looking for such an ordinary person, and what secrets did he have? Curiosity killed the cat. How much ability did he have, and he dared to interfere with the matters of sky sovereigns. After Ma Xianwang left, Ling Han looked towards Wang Chuanhe and asked, "What wish do you have?" "Here it comes." Wang Chuanhe instantly became excited and said, "My lord, I have a great enmity, and would like to ask my lord to act and destroy my enemy." "There's no need to call me my lord. My name is Ling Han. You can call me senior." Ling Han thought for a moment, and decided not to reveal the relationship between them for the time being. "Yes, senior," Wang Chuanhe hurriedly said. Ling Han glanced at him and said, "I won't act." Wang Chuanhe instantly felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His excited expression froze, and his expression was filled with disappointment. He looked towards Ling Han, his lips trembling slightly. "But," he wanted to ask, but he couldn't make a sound. "Don't you want to ask that woman yourself why she betrayed you?" Ling Han asked with a smile. Wang Chuanhe was shocked and said, "My lord, how did you know?" After Ling Han pointed out with his finger just now, he had already flipped through all of Wang Chuanhe's memories, and naturally knew what the other party had encountered. "I won't act, but I can teach you martial arts, and let you take revenge with your own hands," Ling Han said. Wang Chuanhe was stunned for a moment, and then he hurriedly knelt down. Disciple Wang Chuanhe greets master. Before he could say the word, "father," he had already been lifted up by Ling Han. I won't accept any more disciples. Ling Han shook his head. What a joke, this was his descendant. If he accepted him as a disciple, then wouldn't the seniority be messed up? I need something from you, and in return, I will give you enough strength to take revenge. How about it? Wang Chuanhe revealed a look of disappointment. An existence that could make an immortal king address as milord, how awesome was that? Unfortunately, the other party was unwilling to accept him as a disciple. But as long as he could take revenge, that was enough. Deal. He nodded. After you take revenge for your family, I will take you away from here, Ling Han said. These people who had light orbs in their consciousness, apart from hiding their life codes, also had their own special abilities. If they could be deciphered, it would be very useful. Moreover, this was his descendant. He taught Wang Chuanhe how to explore divine sense, and then the two of them resonated, allowing Wang Chuanhe to discover that there was another light orb in his body, and he obtained the information within it. Wang Chuanhe gave this information back to Ling Han, and Ling Han taught him how to cultivate. What was Ling Han's cultivation level, and how many heavenly and earthly treasures did he have? With endless resources, even a stupid pig could become an immortal king. After only 7 days, Wang Chuanhe reached the dividing soul tier. Ling Han did not intend to build a stable foundation for Wang Chuanhe. The other party did not have outstanding talent in martial art, but his luck was especially good. For example, if he was given a choice of 2, 3, or even 10,000, he would always be able to find the right one. If he was given the chance to go to an ancient site and risk his life, it would probably be as easy as walking on flat ground. His special ability was his super good luck. For revenge, the dividing soul tier would definitely be enough. Go! Ling Han waved his hand. He wanted to properly digest the life codes he had just obtained. Wang Chuanhe respectfully kowtowed to Ling Han. 7 days ago, he would never have thought that he would undergo such an earth-shattering change in just a short 7 days. He was filled with gratitude towards Ling Han, although he also knew that the things Ling Han had obtained from his sea of consciousness were definitely extraordinary. To be able to help him take revenge for his blood feud, this was a great kindness. He left King Xian's manor, preparing to leave the city and return to Thousand Water Town. But just as he reached the city gate, he was stopped. Stop, a guard said loudly. You can't leave. End of this chapter. Chapter 3062. If I tell you to stay, then stay. Why do you ask so many questions? The guard said impatiently. Wang Chuanhe thought for a moment, and then realized. Is it Lei Dong? He had only offended Lei Dong here, so there was no need for others to bother with a little beggar like him. He had only offended Lei Dong here, so there was no need for others to bother with a little beggar like him. Since you know you've offended young Master Lei, you still want to leave? The guard said, not even looking at Wang Chuanhe directly. Fine, I'll wait for him, Wang Chuanhe said. Since Lei Dong was looking for a beating, then it was all his fault. Although the Lei clan had an elite beyond the dividing soul tier, didn't he still have Ling Han behind him? To say nothing of others, just Ma Xianwang alone was enough to make the Lei clan not dare to fart. Not long after, Lei Dong ran over. Little beggar, you're really good at hiding. Lei Dong was slightly surprised. 7 days ago, he had been waiting at the entrance of King Xian's estate, but he didn't see Wang Chuanhe appear no matter how long he waited. This made him feel strange, and he couldn't figure it out. However, he naturally wouldn't believe that Wang Chuanhe was the person that King Xian's estate was looking for. As expected, he had many spies in the city, and soon found this little beggar. I said, you'll regret it. Lei Dong attacked brazenly, striking out with a palm, wanting to kill Wang Chuanhe. Killing intent flashed through Wang Chuanhe's eyes, and he also struck out with a palm. Pung! Lei Dong instantly turned into a rain of blood. Against a dividing soul tier cultivator, a severing mundane tier cultivator would naturally die in a single move. Although 7 days had passed in the outside world, under the acceleration of time, Wang Chuanhe had gone through almost 10 years of hard cultivation. As his strength increased, his mentality also changed. Killing decisively, this was the mentality that he had cultivated with Ling Han. Wang Chuanhe didn't even look at him, and only said to the guard, "Are you still going to stop me?" The guard trembled and hurriedly shook his head. He didn't want to die. That's good. Wang Chuan had turned and walked out of the city. The guard was still scared, and after being dazed for a while, he finally knew to run to the Lei clan to report the news. An outstanding clansman of the Lei clan had died, and he was a witness. If he didn't report it, he would definitely be skinned alive by the Lei clan. When the news spread, the Lei family was naturally enraged. Lei Qianxing, Lei Dong's father, was the first to rush out. He wanted to capture Wang Chuan and kill him in front of his son's coffin. He was an ascending origin tier cultivator, so his speed was incredibly fast. With a single shift of his body, he had already arrived at the city gates. Looking at the bloodstains on the ground, he couldn't help but have a sorrowful expression as tears streamed down his face. He only had one son. "You dare kill my son? Not only will I tear you to shreds, I'll also find all 9 generations of your family and kill them all." Lei Qianxing viciously said. "AI." A sigh suddenly sounded out. "Who is it?" Lei Qianxing was startled. He actually hadn't discovered that there was another person nearby. It should be known that with his might as an ascending origin tier elite, ordinary people would have long since fled in fear. How could there possibly be someone so close to him? Ling Han walked out slowly. "Let the juniors settle their own matters. Why are you interfering?" He was Wang Chuan's ancestor, so how could he watch as Lei Qianxing hunted down a descendant? Lei Qianxing sized him up and couldn't help but frown slightly. He couldn't see through Ling Han's cultivation, but he was certain that he definitely wasn't a celestial king. Celestial kings were shrouded in brilliant colors, and this was the most obvious characteristic. Since he wasn't a celestial king, he was at most an ascending origin tier like himself. What was there to fear? "From your tone, you seem to be the senior of the murderer who killed my son," he asked. Ling Han nodded. "That's right." "Fine, then I'll kill you first." Lei Qianxing's eyes turned cold, killing intent surging. "Stop." He was just about to move when he suddenly heard a shout, causing him to forcibly stop. An expression of shock appeared on his face, and he blurted out, "Lord Celestial King." There was only one Lord Celestial King here, and that was Ma Xianwang. The Lei clan was an ascending origin tier force, and was already very powerful, but in front of a Celestial King force, it was completely trash. If Ma Xianwang really wanted to move against the Lei clan, he could easily destroy the Lei clan. Thus, Lei Qianxing immediately became incredibly respectful, and clasped his hands in greeting to Ma Xianwang. "Greetings, Lord Ma." But the next scene caused Lei Qianxing's face to turn green. He saw Ma Xianwang jog over and kneel down to Ling Han. This lowly one was not strict enough, and actually offended Lord. "Please forgive me, Lord." "Fuck?" Lei Qianxing's expression was filled with disbelief. That was a celestial king, the strongest in the world, but he actually knelt down and addressed Ma Xianwang as if he was incredibly lowly. If he had heard of this, he would definitely laugh loudly, denounce it as ridiculous, and take it as a complete joke. But when this scene happened before his eyes, Lei Qianxing only felt a bone-chilling coldness. Even a celestial king had to kneel down to greet him, so who was this incredibly young man? His legs involuntarily weakened, and he directly knelt down. He wanted to call him Lord, but no words came out. It was too frightening. Ling Han only smiled faintly. "Lord, please don't interfere in the matters of the younger generation, all right?" "All right, all right, all right." Lei Qianxing finally gathered a bit of courage. From Ling Han's words, it seemed like he didn't want to make things difficult for him and the Lei family anymore. This naturally made him feel relieved, and his back was drenched in cold sweat, drenching his clothes. Ling Han nodded and turned to leave. Only when Ling Han's figure disappeared did Lei Qianxing's entire body go limp, and he fell on his butt. "Pa!" He was immediately slapped across the face. Ma Xianwang was glaring at him fiercely, as if he wanted to swallow him whole. But Lei Qianxing's heart jumped. "You bastard, this seat was almost killed because of you." Ma Xianwang flew into a rage, and gave him a round of beating. Lei Qianxing could only cry out in pain, not even daring to defend himself. Thankfully, Ma Xianwang saw that Ling Han had spared him and did not dare to beat Lei Qianxing to death. If one day, Ling Han had a sudden impulse and said that he wanted to personally deal with Lei Qianxing, then wouldn't he be in deep trouble? Scram. In the end, Ma Xianwang sent Lei Qianxing flying with a kick. Out of sight, out of mind. Lei Qianxing could be said to have escaped death twice. Dragging his heavily injured body back to the Lei family, he was still thinking how lucky he was. To be targeted by an Celestial King, someone many times stronger than an Celestial King, and still not die, this was truly not an easy feat. Thinking of this, he actually felt a little proud. Seventh Elder, what happened to you? Seeing Lei Qianxing return drenched in blood, the Lei family members were all shocked. It's nothing, nothing. Lei Qianxing hurriedly waved his hands. He naturally couldn't bring up his own scandal, and could only think of an excuse to change the subject. End of chapter. Chapter 3063. Ling Han naturally wouldn't take such a small matter to heart. He also left the city, and followed behind Wang Chuanhe. It wasn't that he couldn't protect this descendant in the city, but he wanted to go to Thousand Water Town to take a look. He arrived at the old site of the Wang clan. It had already been 3 years since that tragedy, so this place naturally didn't have the rivers of blood from back then. It had already recovered its bustling presence. However, it wasn't the Wang clan that occupied this place today, but the Li clan. Ling Han released his divine sense and swept it over, and couldn't help but show a strange expression. Today was really a coincidence. It was the auspicious day of Li Jingchu's wedding, and her husband's clan had a very powerful background. It was a disciple of a large sect called Luo Guang. Was this Wang Chuanhe's luck attribute? The Li clan couldn't have married off a daughter a day earlier or a day later, but it just had to be today. Ling Han didn't make a move. He only traced the origins of the Wang clan, wanting to know what exactly his descendant had experienced. Just at this moment, Wang Chuanhe hurried over. When he left, Wang Chuanhe used a whole 3 years, but now he only used half a day's time to return. There was no other reason. From the heavenly body tier to the dividing soul tier, his strength had increased many times over. To say nothing else, only severing mundane tiers could fly here, and this alone saved him a lot of time. He was filled with emotion, and felt even more grateful towards Ling Han. Without Ling Han, there wouldn't be the current him, and there wouldn't be any need to talk about revenge. He would definitely be gasping for breath in some corner, worrying about being hunted down by the Li clan, right? 3 years had passed, and whether it was his strength or appearance, he had changed greatly. Previously, he was still a slightly inexperienced youth, and now he had become a tall and slender young man. His appearance had also become slightly more mature. Walking on this familiar street, no one actually recognized that he was a remnant of the Wang clan, causing Wang Chuanhe to feel a misconception. Had he come to the wrong place? First, he returned home to take a look. He arrived at the old site of the Wang clan and saw that joyous scene. Who was getting married? He randomly grabbed a person to ask, and his gaze immediately became fierce. Li Jingchu, a name that he had deliberately suppressed at the bottom of his heart, yet would occasionally pop up and bite at his soul. This important accomplice that had caused the destruction of his family and the death of all his relatives was actually getting married now? On what grounds? Wang Chuanhe's expression immediately became gloomy. Fortunately, he had arrived in time. If it had been delayed until tomorrow, Li Jingchu would have left with her husband after the wedding to go to some big sect and become a disciple of that big sect. He raised his head to look at the plaque on the door, then strode forward. Everything would be settled today. Sir, your invitation? Someone stopped him. Wang Chuanhe grinned. What? You don't even recognize me? That person stared at Wang Chuanhe. He felt that this person seemed somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember who he was. My surname is Wang, Wang Chuanhe said again. Wang? That person's heart immediately jumped. In Thousand Water Town, the surname Wang was taboo. Ah, you're Wang Chuanhe. He finally remembered, mainly because he never thought that the Wang family, the only fish that escaped the net, would actually dare to appear. What? Wang Chuanhe, the only descendant of the Wang clan. There were quite a few people in the surroundings who couldn't help but be shocked when they heard this. That youth from the Wang clan had actually returned? But it had only been 3 years. How much could Wang Chuanha's strength have changed? Isn't he just throwing his life away by coming back? It's definitely because of Li Jingchu. That's right. Back then, the Wang clan was destroyed because of Wang Chuanha and Li Jingchu's grand wedding. Who would have thought that after 3 years, Li Jingchu would be getting married again? When Wang Chuanha heard the news, he naturally couldn't bear it. Anyone would be able to bear it. The woman he married in the past brought disaster to his entire clan, and now she's marrying another man in the same place. How could he bear it? Shu, lower your voice. Do you want to die? Everyone whispered to each other. This was a wedding banquet, so there was no lack of people from Thousand Water Town. They naturally knew about this matter that had happened 3 years ago. Furthermore, the destruction of the Wang clan was an incomparably sensational event for a small place like Thousand Water Town. Even if it had been 1,000 years, it would still be mentioned. Wang Chuanha strode forward, charging straight into the main hall. Stop. The Li clan's guards at the door all tried to stop him, but Wang Chuanha only lightly shook them. Bang, 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 the guards were sent flying. How could they possibly stop him? Seeing this scene, the guests were all shocked. Could it be that in these 3 years, Wang Chuanha had encountered a great opportunity? They remembered that he was only in the heavenly body tier back then, and definitely didn't have such battle prowess. Wang Chuanha strode forward, and behind him were the groaning and injured people who had fallen to the ground. The scene was very lively. He was naturally very familiar with this place, and soon arrived at the main hall. Coincidentally, the bride had just been invited out, and was about to complete 3 kowtows and 9 bows with the groom. Next, she would be sent to the bridal chamber. Stop. The Li clan obviously had more than just a few guards. More people had caught up, making a clamor. This caused the patriarch of the Li clan to involuntarily look displeased, and he looked towards the elders at the side. What day was today? The big day that Li Jingchu was betrothed to the 7th grandson of the 3rd elder of the Red Flame sect, Luo Guang? What kind of force was the Red Flame sect? A celestial king? Jingchu was really a lucky star. 2 years ago, she had met Luo Guang by chance, causing Luo Guang to fall in love with her at first sight. To the Luo clan, they were unwilling for Luo Guang to marry such a mediocre wife. But who asked Luo Guang to like her? After coaxing and pestering for 2 years, the Luo clan finally nodded. However, the wedding would only be held in Thousand Water Town. After returning to the Red Flame sect, the Luo clan wouldn't hold another wedding, because they couldn't afford to lose face. Marrying such an ordinary woman, and having a wedding? What a joke! However, to the Li clan, being able to ally with the Luo clan was already a blessing in disguise, because the Luo clan had an ascending origin tier ancestor, and the sect master of the Red Flame sect was a celestial king. An elder of the Li clan immediately stood up and shouted towards the outside, "What's all the noise about?" In reply to 4th elder, "The remnants of the Wang clan have come," a guard said, panting. What? The elders of the Li clan were all stunned, and Li Jingchu, who was wearing a red veil, also trembled slightly, which was immediately detected by the groom at the side. Leave everything to me," Luo Guang said, his eyes filled with confidence and disdain. However, he was a mere severing mundane clan, so he naturally would make a fuss over a small matter. Though he was only in the severing mundane tier, he had countless rare treasures on him, and could slaughter a force like the Li clan all by himself. Li Jingchu nodded and then said, "Thank you, Luo Guang." "I am your husband, and your matters are my matters," Luo Guang said very gently. Li Jingchu slowly leaned over and said, "I just knew that you are good to me." "Li clan, I'm here." Wang Chuanha had already walked into the main hall, his eyes fixed on the newlyweds dressed in bright red wedding robes. End of this chapter. Chapter 3065. Luo Guang couldn't help but be furious. He was a core disciple of the Red Flame sect, the heir of a celestial king tier force, and a nobody dared to ignore him? Are you very strong? But seeing that you're so young, You're at most a severing mundane tier. I'll take you as a fourth severance, and how many such elites were there in the Red Flame sect? To say the least, the Red Flame sect had countless dividing soul tiers. Wang Chuanhe glanced at him. I have no enmity with you, and I don't want to kill you. But if you continue to be so ungrateful, don't blame me for being rude. Luo Guang couldn't help but laugh in anger. Brat, do you know who I am? I'm Luo Guang of the Red Flame sect. My grandfather is an elder of the Red Flame sect, an ascending origin tier great elite, and the sect master of my Red Flame sect is a second heaven celestial king. If this kind of background was announced before Wang Chuanhe had met Ling Han, then it would definitely give this young man a great fright. To say nothing of celestial kings, even ascending origin tiers and immortal palace tiers were colossal beings to the Wang clan and could not be matched at all. But now, Wang Chuanhe smiled faintly and took the initiative to grab at Luo Guang. So what if he was a disciple of a celestial king tier? Are you really going to defy the heavens? Luo Guang smirked coldly and launched a palm strike at Wang Chuanhe. Peng! The moment the two forces collided, Luo Guang's expression instantly changed. Too strong, far surpassing his limits. He didn't dare to hesitate and immediately unleashed the treasure on him. Xiao, a yellow paper floated out. There was golden light flickering on the paper, exuding a frightening might. This was a treasure that the elders of the Luo clan had bestowed upon him and could unleash a dividing soul tier attack. However, the number of times it could be used was limited, and it was a consumable. As the golden light flickered, it turned into an ancient character that pressed down on Wang Chuanhe. Wang Chuanhe roared and met it with a punch. Peng the character immediately crumbled, but Wang Chuanhe also staggered and retreated more than 10 steps. Finally, he was able to stabilize the situation. Luo Guang was shocked. He had already overestimated his opponent, but he hadn't thought that Wang Chuanhe was not a fourth severance, but a dividing soul tier. What should he do? Although the talisman in his hand was able to match the opponent, it was a consumable item and could only be used a limited number of times. Once the power of the talisman was exhausted, how was he going to defend? For a moment, his head was covered in cold sweat. Sir, you should think carefully about the consequences of going against the Red Flame sect, he said in a threatening manner. Wang Chuanhe didn't pay any attention to him. Since he was already fighting, he wouldn't show any mercy. This was what Ling Han had taught him. Once he made a move, he wouldn't leave any loose ends. People like him would most likely seek revenge afterwards, so he had to be killed. Boom, he punched again. Luo Guang was helpless and could only continue to activate the talisman paper to resist Wang Chuanhe's attack. On the surface, the two lords seemed to be evenly matched. Luo Guang wasn't at a disadvantage at all. In fact, he was even calmer. All he did was throw out a talisman, and he seemed to be doing it with ease. Thus, the people of the Li clan loudly cheered for him. As expected of young Master Luo, an important disciple of the Red Flame sect is naturally powerful. Bah, what important disciple? It's a core disciple. Yes. Many people started to flatter him. If they could form a good relationship with Luo Guang and enter the Red Flame sect in the future, wouldn't that be like a carp leaping through the Dragon's Gate? But there were also those with good eyesight who fell into deep thought and shock. How long had it been? 3 years, a mere 3 years, but Wang Chuanhe's strength had shockingly reached a height that even the Li clan had to look up to. Who would believe that Wang Chuanhe had cultivated this himself? Thus, behind Wang Chuanhe definitely stood a great expert, or even a super force. To be able to cultivate Wang Chuanhe in 3 years, then how terrifying would this expert and force be? Just thinking about it was enough to make one feel terrified. Wang Chuanhe became more and more ferocious as he fought. After another dozen punches, the golden light on the talisman paper started to dim. Not good. The people of the Li clan understood. The cheers and shouts from before all died down and eventually disappeared. How could they still cheer? They were all going to lose. Bang, as expected, after another 3 punches, the talisman paper directly shattered. Wang Chuanhe's killing intent was already blazing, and he punched at Luo Guang. Since he had attacked, he would not show any mercy. You dare! Luo Guang roared. I am a disciple of the Red Flame sect. If you kill me, it will be the same as… Bang! Wang Chuanha's punch landed. Under the pressure of the dividing soul tear, Luo Guang did not even have the ability to retaliate. He was immediately blasted into a rain of blood. Everyone was shocked, speechless. Luo Guang had died just like that. He was a core disciple of the Red Flame sect. If he died here, it would definitely be difficult for Wang Chuanha to escape death, but the Li clan would also have to die with him. It was over, it was all over. The people of the Li clan all glared at Wang Chuanha with hatred. This was all because of him. He had done it on purpose, on purpose. This guy wanted to drag the Li clan down with him. Wang, the rain of blood that Luo Guang had turned into suddenly glowed, forming a human face. This face was obviously incomparably furious. It stared at Wang Chuanha. How dare you, to actually dare to kill this lord's grandson? I've already killed him, so what's the point of saying such nonsense? Wang Chuanha said disdainfully. Damn it, this lord will immediately come and take your life. The human face said. Pa, the figure of light shattered, and completely dissipated. The people of the Li clan all felt that they had been lucky. Wang Chuanha had taken the initiative to draw their enmity, and that might possibly save the Li clan from being implicated. Wang Chuanha. Li Jingchu said word by word, and tossed the red veil to one side. The groom had already died, so how could they still get married? If one had to say who was the most dejected with Luo Guang's death, it would definitely be her. It was not that she loved Luo Guang to the bone, but rather because Luo Guang had been her springboard to enter the Red Flame sect. Without Luo Guang to pull strings for her, with her natural talent, how could she be qualified to enter a Celestial King tier sect? You're so vicious. She glared at Wang Chuanha, her gaze incredibly resentful. I'm vicious. Wang Chuanha smirked coldly. Li Jingchu, how forgetful are you? Could it be that you have already forgotten how the members of my Wang clan died? Let me remind you, they were all poisoned by you, and that's why they were defeated and died. So what? Li Jingchu did not care in the slightest. The Li and Wang clans have been enemies for generations, and any unscrupulous methods would not be enough. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame your Wang clan for being too stupid. Wang Chuanha revealed a mournful smile. He hated himself. How could he have fallen in love with such a venomous woman? Previously, he had still been puzzled as to why Li Jingchu would act so viciously. Could it be that she had some difficulties? This was a sliver of hope that had flashed through his mind. But now, he knew that he had been too naive all along. She had never fallen in love with him, and everything had been an act, all for the sake of destroying the Wang clan. End of this chapter. Chapter 3066. Such a woman's death was not to be pitied. Wang Chuanha was about to make a move, but at this moment, there was a long howl that sounded like furious thunder. Most people fell to the ground. Everyone was overwhelmed with shock. Which expert had arrived? The commotion was just too great. In the blink of an eye, an old man appeared in the main hall. So strange. They had clearly never seen him before, but everyone felt a sense of familiarity. This old man's face was filled with fury. He quickly fixed his eyes on Wang Chuanha. Audacious maniac, you actually dared to kill my beloved grandson. I am nearby. Do you think you can still leave calmly after killing him? Everyone understood. They had clearly not seen this old man before, but they felt a sense of familiarity. As it turned out, this old man was Luo Guang's grandfather, Luo Xiushin. He had appeared as light spots before. This was a great elite of the ascending origin tier. Wang Chuanha did not move, and was as steady as a mountain. It was impossible to say that he was not afraid. After all, the gap in strength was too great. However, after cultivating with Ling Han for 10 years, he had already learned the word calm. Even if the sky collapsed, he would not be moved. Furthermore, Ling Han had once said that he only cared about revenge and did not have to worry about anything else. Did he believe Ling Han's words? Of course he did. This was an existence that even Ma Xianwang had to address as Lord. Would he lie to him? However, in the present situation, could it be that Ling Han could still suddenly appear here? Greetings, Lord. Everyone knelt down, paying their respects to this old man. Luo Xiuxian did not pay them any attention. A group of trash that was at most in the severing mundane tier was not worthy of a second glance from him. Brat, how do you want to die? He asked calmly, but his eyes were filled with hatred. Old man, go to the side. A voice suddenly traveled over. Everyone was surprised. Who was this person? Could it be that he did not know who Luo Xiuxian was? He dared to call him old man, and even told him to go to the side. This was really audacious. Wang Chuanhe instantly showed an expression of joy. This was Ling Han. So the other party had been following him all along. He couldn't help but feel excited, because he knew what kind of existence Ling Han was. Even if he wasn't very clear, he at least knew that he was extremely powerful, and even celestial kings had to kneel down to pay respect to him. How could he not be touched that such an important person was always protecting him? Luo Xiuxian looked over, and couldn't help but smirk coldly. And who do you think you are? This is merely a measly severing mundane force, so how could there be so many people who don't know what's good for them? Sigh, this place was too backward. Perhaps everyone thought that the severing mundane tier was the strongest existence, right? Ling Han shook his head. He was just about to slap this fellow to death when he exclaimed softly and looked into the distance. Hong, multicolored clouds danced in the sky, and a person could be seen treading on a multicolored cloud as he approached. His body was wrapped in multicolored light. Ma Xianwang. When Luo Xiuxian saw this, his expression immediately became solemn. He could look down on everyone here, but in the face of the Celestial King, he could only feel fear and trepidation. Xiao, Ma Xianwang landed, and his eyes swept over. Though they swept over Ling Han, he ignored him. This was because Ling Han had used some trick to prevent the other from discovering him. Honorable nephew, are you all right? His eyes stopped on Wang Chuanhe, and it was as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. Thankfully, he was fine. He was a dignified celestial king, so it was naturally impossible for him not to know that an ascending origin tier elite had appeared in his vicinity. At first, he didn't need to take it to heart. It was normal for others to pass by or have some matters, so he didn't need to make a fuss. But the problem was that he was very concerned about Wang Chuanhe. Previously, he had deliberately researched the latter's information and knew about the Wang clan. Thus, he guessed that Wang Chuanhe had gone to take revenge this time. He was afraid that if something happened to Wang Chuanhe, he would be blamed by Ling Han. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong, so he immediately rushed over. True enough, his premonition was right. It looked like Wang Chuanhe had really been targeted by this ascending origin tier. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, Lord Ma. Wang Chuanhe bowed slightly. In Ling Han's eyes, this was already very lowly. It should be known that the Ling clan could casually grab a handful of heavenly venerables, so celestial kings really weren't much. However, in everyone's eyes, this was practically like the sky was about to collapse. That was a celestial king, and he actually sucked up to Wang Chuanhe so much. Now all the truth was out. No wonder he could become so powerful. There was a celestial king strongly supporting him. In the hearts of these people, celestial kings were omnipotent, so it was very normal for Wang Chuanhe to be reborn in 3 years. Only now did Ma Xianwang look towards Luo Xiuxian, frowning. There's nothing for you to do here. Go. He flicked his hand. The same words, if said by Ling Han, would cause Luo Xiuxian to explode in fury, but when said by Ma Xianwang, Luo Xiuxian didn't dare to be angry in the slightest, only feeling indignant. He argued for what was right and said, "My lord, this brat killed my grandson, so please, my lord, let me take revenge." Ma Xianwang swept a pitiful look over him, thinking, putting aside the fact that he only killed your grandson, even if he killed your own son or father, you'd have to tolerate it and accept it, because you couldn't afford to offend the person behind him at all. Of course, he was a dignified celestial king, and didn't need to explain anything to an ascending origin tier. He calmly said, "I'm letting you go, so do you still have any objections?" "I dare not." Luo Xiuxian gritted his teeth, and was just about to turn and leave, yet he said, "I'm an elder of the Red Flame sect, and the sect master of my sect is also a celestial king. I hope that Milord can reconsider on this account." "Are you using the Red Flame sect to threaten me?" Ma Xuanwang's expression immediately darkened. He smirked coldly in his heart. Putting aside a mere celestial king, even if a heavenly venerable came, so what? The world was vast, but Ling Han was the greatest. "Get lost," he reprimanded. Luo Xiuxian was helpless, and could only turn and leave. With his weak physique, he didn't dare to challenge a celestial king. Seeing Luo Xiuxian actually flee with his tail between his legs, everyone was so shocked that their scalps went numb. For the sake of Wang Chuanhe, Ma Xianwang was actually willing to offend a celestial king tier force. What kind of doting was this? Li Jingchu was filled with even more regret. If she had been firm in her belief and followed Wang Chuanhe all along, then with Ma Xuanwang's attitude towards Wang Chuanhe, even taking her as his personal disciple would be a small matter, right? And now? Luo Guang was dead, and everything was over. No, Luo Guang was dead, but Wang Chuanhe was still alive, and deeply favored by a celestial king. Her eyes flickered. At this moment, she had to make an incredibly important decision. In a mere instant, she had already made up her mind. "Chuanhe, help me." She stretched out a hand to Wang Chuanhe. "Actually, I was forced to do this. I love you so deeply, so how could I possibly betray you? But I had no choice. The clan threatened me with my mother's life. If I did not obey their orders, my mother would be killed by them. This time, it was also the clan that threatened my mother's life, forcing me to marry Luo Guang. Chuanhe, save me, save my mother." End of this chapter. Chapter 3067. Even Ling Han was slightly surprised. This woman could actually be so shameless. Was there a need to be so shameless just to curry favor with a celestial king? He didn't act up and only watched silently. If Wang Chuanhe was wishy-washy and soft-hearted towards this kind of woman, then he couldn't be bothered to acknowledge this descendant. He would directly send him to the 9 heavens and then ignore him. Li Jingchu. The members of the Li clan all roared, appearing incredibly furious. They could understand that you wanted to live, but they couldn't be made the scapegoat. "Chuanhe, kill them, kill them." Li Jingchu called out, a sinister expression flashing on her pretty face, ruining her beauty and making her look slightly sinister. "Kill them all and I can leave with you. We will love each other and grow old together." She showed a pitiful expression. "Chuanhe, haven't you always wanted to marry me? Today I will marry you." Wang Chuanhe was silent. After a while, he shook his head and said, "Do you think I am a 3-year-old child, or that young man who was fooled by you 3 years ago?" He paused, and his killing intent blazed. "Today, I have come for revenge. Anyone who is stained with the blood of the Wang clan can forget about escaping. Li Jingchu, you are one of the main culprits, and dying 100 times is not too much." Li Jingchu's aura was snatched away. Facing Wang Chuanhe's fierce expression, she didn't dare to shout loudly, and only appeared even more pitiful. She said, "Chuanhe, just forgive me this once. I will definitely serve you well." "Disgusting," Wang Chuanhe said coldly. Shua, 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 with a few strokes of his hand, Li Bing was cut into 10 pieces. The aura of an eternal river tear was very long, and even if he was cut into 10 pieces, he didn't die immediately. Every piece of his body was writhing like an earthworm. This scene was a little bloody and a little frightening. Wang Chuanhe moved again, grabbing another member of the Li clan, and said darkly, "How many members of the Wang clan have you killed?" That person directly broke down in fright, his eyes rolling back as he peed all over himself. "I won't die so easily," Wang Chuanhe said coldly, and threw that person to one side after sealing his cultivation level. The Li family head shouted, "Split up and run. Although this unfilial son is powerful, he's only one person. He can't stop all of us." Everyone from the Li family tried to escape, but they immediately realized that they couldn't get out of the hall. The people outside couldn't get out of the courtyard, and the people in the town couldn't get out of the town. What was going on? Was this the doing of that unfilial son, Wang Chuanhe? Wang Chuanhe looked at Ma Xianwang and cupped his hands. Thank you for your help, sir. He didn't have that kind of ability yet, but celestial kings could do it easily. Ma Xianwang nodded and smiled. It's nothing. It was over, it was truly over. Even an immortal king had made a move. Today, even if a dog of the Li clan could escape alive, it would still be a great humiliation for an immortal king. Therefore, the Li family was beyond saving. They were as dead as they could be. Wang Chuanhe made a move. As long as someone had participated in the battle of the Wang clan 3 years ago, he would kill them. No matter how many people the other party killed, he would cut them into pieces. His methods could be said to be extremely cruel. He started with the unimportant people. For example, the Li family head and Li Jingchu naturally had to be left to the end. Otherwise, the joy of revenge wouldn't be at its peak. Ling Han saw this and shook his head slightly. He didn't have the painful experience of having his clan annihilated. Even though the Wang clan was his bloodline descendant, after so many generations, he had never seen it before. He was furious, but he couldn't feel the same as Wang Chuanhe. To Ling Han, this was only a descendant in name. But to Wang Chuanhe, this was his family that he had been with day and night. How could they be compared to each other? Ling Han could understand Wang Chuanhe's heart that was filled with hatred, but he still felt that his methods were a little overboard. Perhaps this young man's heart had always been hiding a wild beast. As the Wang clan was annihilated, this wild beast was also released. It devoured his nature, or perhaps it had released its nature. He had to teach him well. Otherwise, this kid would one day suffer from chi deviation. In the hall, all the Li family members had already collapsed to the ground. Faced with such a situation, what else could they do apart from waiting for death? Only Li Jingchu refused to give up. She put on a one-woman show, recounting the bits and pieces of her interactions with Wang Chuanhe back then in an attempt to move him. But a powerful aura suddenly crashed over, directly breaking through the defenses that Ma Xianwang had set up. Then, a figure appeared and stood abruptly in the lobby. However, one only needed to look at the 2 beams of light wrapped around his body to know that this was not strange at all. In fact, it was very normal. This was because this was a second firmament immortal king. Brother Ma. The immortal king cupped his fists and greeted Ma Xianwang. Ma Xianwang also looked at him and frowned slightly. Then he probed, Red Flame Sect Master, Brother Su Fei. That's me. The second firmament immortal king laughed out loud. Ma Xianwang was taken aback, but his expression did not change. He said, I wonder why Brother Su is here? Brother Ma, that's not very nice of you. Su Fei shook his head. You just chased away one of our sect's elders. How can you not remember? Upon hearing this, the Li family members who had collapsed to the ground perked up a little. Even Li Jingchu closed her mouth. The situation might have changed. Ma Xianwang nodded and said with a smile, Oh, look at my memory. So that's why Brother Su is here. However, I don't think I injured that elder of your esteemed sect, right? Indeed. Su Fei nodded. However, Elder Luo's grandson died tragically here. As the Red Flame sect master, there's naturally no reason for me to stand idly by. Brother Ma, please hand over the murderer. In a few days, I'll treat you to a drink and have a good chat. What murderer? I don't know. Ma Xianwang spread his hands. It's him. Unexpectedly, the Li family members all roared and pointed at Wang Chuanhe. He was their only hope. Therefore, they did not even care about Ma Xianwang's might. Li Jingchu cried and said, Lord Immortal King, I am Luo Guang's new wife. However, this lunatic has been coveting my beauty all this while. He actually tried to kill me on the day of my wedding. Lord Immortal, please uphold justice. She cried like a pear blossom in the rain. It was a lovely sight. Unfortunately, how could Su Fei be moved? He was underestimating an immortal king too much. Ma Xianwang, on the other hand, frowned slightly. He did not expect that the Li clan would actually have such great courage to speak in front of him in such a desperate situation. Su Fei smiled ambiguously as he looked at Ma Xianwang without saying a word. Ma Xianwang pondered for a moment and said, "This child is of great importance. Brother Su, it's best you don't interfere." "Oh, could he be Brother Ma's illegitimate son?" Su Fei said with a smile. End of chapter. Chapter 3069. What was the source of spiritual energy? The answer was very simple. Void and intrinsic power. The plane communicated with the void, extracting intrinsic power and condensing it in the core, allowing the plane to operate. As if gaining some kind of life, the plane would then erupt with power. That was spiritual energy. Hence, intrinsic power and spiritual energy were different, but they were related. Everything is related to the void, and the endless power within the void. In that case, the unique power of a plane is also an intrinsic power, just that it has been converted by the plane. Then, the eighth power is ultimately the power of the plane. It's still intrinsic power, just strengthened countless times. My body can be seen as an origin world. Then, can I create another void? That's the source of my power. I can even take in the void directly. Ling Han was a little shocked by his own delusion. Even madness only dared to devour the origin world, and did not say that he wanted to take the void for himself. The void was too big, and no existence could explore the boundaries of the void. It would not be strange even if there were 1,000 or 10,000 origin worlds here. Let's not think so much. I'd better push the plane in my body to a higher level as soon as possible. That way, I'll truly have the qualifications to fight madness. Also, I have to find extinction. She still has a life code hidden in her body. However, as long as there are not many planes in the body, having a life code is useless. He came out of seclusion to understand the cultivation progress of the people around him. Those who had become celestial venerables before were basically stuck at the same level. This level was too high. Without special opportunities, it would take at least a long period of time to advance. The other younger generations of the Ling family, with the endless supply of resources, had produced tens of thousands of celestial kings. The current Ling family could be called the world's top aristocratic family. None of the old seven-step families could compare. However, because of the threat of extinction, the Ling family was still relatively low-key. "What about Wang Chuanha?" Ling Han asked. "That kid?" Ling Jianshui revealed a strange expression. "His luck is simply unimaginable. His martial art talent is obviously ordinary, but he has had many fortuitous encounters. In just a few years, he has already become a celestial venerable." Yes. Even Ling Han was very surprised. Compared to his children and grandchildren, he didn't care too much about Wang Chuanha. Yet Wang Chuanha was able to step into the Empyrean realm. This was truly inconceivable. Although Ling Han could kill a six-step immortal monarch with a single finger, he was unable to push a ninth firmament immortal monarch into a heavenly venerate. This was beyond the laws and involved intrinsic strength. Wang Chuanha's talent in martial art was mediocre. In order for him to take revenge as soon as possible, Ling Han didn't even give him a stable foundation. Logically speaking, it would be difficult for him to even become an immortal king. How could he suddenly step into the heavenly lord realm? Is luck really that awesome? Ling Han furrowed his brows. That brat is very vicious. He might even blame the destruction of his family on us. Keep an eye on him and don't let anything happen to him. Okay, I understand. Ling Jianshui nodded. Ling Han continued his seclusion. After another 5 billion years, he had already deduced all the fourth-rate and third-rate symbols. This increased his cultivation speed by countless times. I've already pushed more than half of the plane to a higher level. My strength is many times stronger than when I fought Frenzy. Coupled with the third-rate heavenly venerate talisman, it should be enough to deal with Frenzy. I'll go to the outer realm battlefield to take a look, especially Poyu and the others. I want to see if they're doing their jobs properly. Also, I want to know what the origins of the current extinction are. Ling Han came out of seclusion and rushed to the outer realm battlefield. He first went to the battlefield. After so much recuperation, the damage to the mother trees had been completely replenished. Another vast army attacked, causing great casualties to the defenders. Ling Han moved and directly fought his way into the Hysteria plane, wantonly destroying it. Only then did he leisurely leave and turn to enter the main battlefield. What disappointed him was that Chong Yen and the others had long escaped. Not only had these 5 escaped, but Golden Silkworm and 10,000 Shadows were also gone. Now, only the 7 Supremes were left, and they were still bitterly holding on. But Frenzy was too powerful. A single tentacle lashed out, and the 7 Supremes could only be sent flying. They were practically unable to stop Frenzy's footsteps. The main battlefield was quickly falling. If this continued, in at most a few billion years, the entire Xuanma plain would definitely become Frenzy's meal. Ling Han gave a long howl and raised his fist to meet Frenzy's attack. Xiao, his speed was extremely fast. His figure transformed into a ray of light, and he was already charging towards Frenzy. He punched out. Boom, a terrifying power vibrated. Peng, peng, peng. Lin Luo and the other 7 Supremes were all sent flying like toys. Fortunately, the physique of the 7 Supremes was not bad, and they were only sent flying. They were not injured in the slightest. Ling Han, the 7 Supremes exclaimed in shock. What did they see? Ling Han punched out, forcibly blocking Frenzy's attack. Hiss, there was actually an existence that could match Frenzy in this world? What was even more inconceivable and unbelievable was that Ling Han was actually still only at the 6 Supremes. 6 Supremes, heavens. If this fellow advanced to the 7th Supremes, just how terrifying would he be? But Ling Han knew that if he advanced to the 7th Supremes, then his greatest gain would be that he would possess an indestructible body. On the other hand, he would also be able to open the door to transforming his internal plane into a super-advanced plane. Power. In truth, he would not be able to increase his power by too much in a short period of time, because right now, his greatest source of power was the power of the plane. This was not something that could be achieved in a single step as his cultivation level increased. He would need a long period of time to cultivate and increase his power. "Seniors, you have worked hard," said Ling Han, his entire person emitting a boundless domineering aura. "From today onwards, we will switch from defense to offense and chase Frenzy out." No matter who said these words, they would all sound like a joke. But right now, Ling Han's domineering aura, which was on par with Frenzy in a single strike, caused everyone to have no choice but to believe him. He had the qualifications to do so. Kill! The spirits of the 7 Supremes were greatly roused. They had waited for so many years, and finally, a person who could reverse the situation had appeared. Ling Han. Frenzy sent out a sharp spiritual wave. It was extremely hateful. Last time, it had not been able to kill Ling Han, which made it realize that it had missed the final chance to eliminate Ling Han. As expected, this time, Ling Han had made a comeback and already possessed the power to contend against it. "Frenzy, your era has ended." Ling Han gave a long howl and attacked powerfully. The 7 Supremes assisted from the side. Although their power was far from being comparable to Frenzy's, they were still at the 7 Supremes, after all, and could still be of some use. Furthermore, they had an indestructible body, so it was completely no problem for them to act as sandbags. End of chapter. Chapter 3070. Boom, boom. Ling Han, on the other hand, was the absolute main force, fighting Frenzy head-on. Scram! His entire body glowed, and all of his third-rate talismans were activated, boosting his strength by 6,000 times. Even Frenzy could not withstand this attack, and its tentacles were sent flying. When Ling Han finished his attack, Frenzy had been forced back 700,000 kilometers. The 7 Supremes were all extremely excited. They had been fighting Frenzy for so many years, and they had always been the ones being forced back by Frenzy. They had never been able to hold their ground for even a day. But now, Frenzy pushed back. This was something that had never happened before. All of them were extremely excited, and even felt their scalps go numb. 7 Steps was also a human, and had emotions. Ling Han activated the 4th-rate talisman again. Although the boost was reduced to 5,000 times, it was still extremely powerful, and it continued to fight Frenzy back. This time, it was pushed back a little less, 500,000 kilometers. Then, Ling Han activated the fifth-rate talisman. All of the combined talismans were activated, and Frenzy was also forced back more than 2 million kilometers, setting a new precedent. Ling Han finished his attack and stood still. He said calmly, "Do you still want to continue?" Frenzy waved its tentacles. Its situation was special. Although transforming into a plane made it stronger, it also lost some of its abilities, such as activating the Celestial Venerable symbol. Before this was not a problem at all. The Celestial Venerable symbol had a time limit, and it took too long to recharge. Moreover, it had absolute crushing power over 7 steps, so it was fine even if it could not activate the Celestial Venerable symbol. But now, Ling Han's original power was basically equal to its own. Whether or not he could activate the Celestial Venerable symbol would be a huge matter. If this continued, it would be forced back step by step, and then it would completely leave the two-realm battlefield. When that time came, Ling Han would charge into its plane, and it would not be able to start another war. "You can't be this strong," Frenzy rumbled. "Unless you obtained the secret of the world." Secret of the world life code. Ling Han's heart shook. The core of the world should not exist. Extinction had made it up to deceive him and Chong Yan's group. But what secret of the world was it now? His inconceivable power came from the ball of light in his sea of consciousness. In theory, it was like a secret that could never be revealed to the world. He himself could not discover the ball of light in his sea of consciousness, and it had to be resonated with him. Basically, there was no possibility of discovering it. Yet, due to countless coincidences, Ling Han discovered this secret and activated this ability. That must be the case. Frenzied emotions seemed to be extremely agitated. "I really didn't expect that after plotting for so many years, you would actually seize the initiative." "That must be," Ling Han said. Frenzy said, "It contains the formation." "That's right, it contains the secrets of the Yuan world's formation. Once I obtain it, I'll be able to break through the shackles and leap out of this pond," said Frenzy. When Lin Luo and the others heard this, they were all shocked and jumped out of the pond. "What did that mean?" Ling Han said, "Then what's beyond this pool?" he thought. Frenzy had looked down on him as a frog at the bottom of a well, which made his imagination run wild. He guessed that there were more origin worlds in the void. Now that Frenzy mentioned it, he had to go with the flow. Otherwise, when Frenzy calmed down, it would be difficult to get more information. "It could be a bigger world or it could be nothingness," Frenzy said. Even Frenzy did not know. Ling Han smiled. "For this, you didn't hesitate to destroy the origin world." "So what?" Frenzy was emotionless. "Since we know that there might be a more exciting world, who would want to be trapped in such a pool? Even if it's just a dark cage, how can we not take a look?" Ling Han understood. Frenzy wanted to devour plane after plane to strengthen itself, but on the other hand, it also wanted to devour those living beings that had balls of light in their consciousness. As long as it refined them, the secrets in the balls of light would belong to it. After so many years, it should have obtained some life codes. Otherwise, it would not have been able to create a 6-step monster. However, Frenzy had its limitations. Its body turned into a plane, and its starting point was higher than anyone else's, but it also lost the possibility of deriving more planes. It could only continue to strengthen its own plane. This kind of improvement was superior to everything in terms of quality, but Ling Han could completely suppress and surpass it with the advantage of quantity. Frenzy had struggled for so many years, but it could not compare to Ling Han. This was normal because Frenzy's plane was strong, but it also added a shackle to it, and it could not come and go as it pleased. On the other hand, Ling Han was really lucky. He met Wali and accepted a disciple who was similar to him, and finally opened his own secret. Originally, this might never be revealed. Everyone is curious, but you can't let countless people die with you just because of your curiosity. Ling Han roared and rushed forward to beat it up again. Previously, he had been suppressed by Frenzy, and now, it was finally his turn to explode. He attacked fiercely, But without the explosion of the celestial sovereign symbol, he could not suppress frenzy. Even with the help of Lin Luo and the other 7 supremes, the two sides were still evenly matched. After all, frenzy was really strong. But after a period of time, when the celestial sovereign symbol was fully charged, Ling Han would usher in an explosive period, and he would force frenzy to retreat. Although this speed was not fast, Lin Luo and the other 7 supremes were incomparably excited. Because if this continued, there would be a day when frenzy would be driven out of the Xuanma Plain. In the future, as long as they guarded this entrance, they would never have to worry about frenzy's invasion. Just as the battle was getting intense, Ling Han, Lin Luo, and the others all felt a few powerful auras rapidly approaching. In just a short while, they saw Chong Yen and the other 5 supremes, as well as Golden Silkworm, Myriad Shadows, and the other 7 supremes all appear. These fellows saw that victory was in sight, and so they came over to make their presence known so that they could leave their names in history. They really knew how to take advantage of others. But before they could finish thinking about this, they saw the 7 supremes charging over. Their target was actually Lin Luo and the others. Peng, peng, peng. No one expected such a turn of events, and Lin Luo and the others were instantly sent flying. Fortunately, the 7 steps of Undying and Indestructible had a strong physique. This could only send them flying, but it could not hurt them at all. Chong Yen, Golden Silkworm, are you guys crazy? Xen Fu shouted sternly. What were they doing? Were they helping frenzy? Chong Yen and the others did not reply. They only launched powerful attacks, restraining Lin Luo and the others. However, Ling Han was the main battle force. As long as he activated the power of the celestial sovereign symbol, frenzy could only be forced to retreat. Even if Chong Yen and the others joined in, it would be useless. Boom! An incomparably powerful aura swept over, and a graceful figure appeared. It was as if she had stepped through the ages, and with an incomparably terrifying power, she slashed towards Ling Han. Extinction. They are tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.